Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto after Sasuke tried to bleed out and drown him meets Kaguya. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. A blonde-haired boy of 13 could be seen sinking to the bottom of the ocean, a huge sword lodged into his side, due to the actions of his supposed teammate. The boy had stunning blue eyes that shined with an unyielding will. His skin was tan, and 3 whisker marks could be seen on each side of his face. The boy was dressed in an orange and blue jumpsuit and blue sandals. This boy is Uzumaki Naruto and he was both drowning and bleeding out. All because his teammate Uchiha Sasuke had gotten upset that he had talked the enemy out of fighting, keeping the boy from gaining his oh so precious Sharingan. He, with what he thought was his last act in the world of the living, lifted up his middle finger and gurgled out, "Fuck you Sasuke Teme." He then blacked out, not knowing that his body had just been wrapped in a pure white shell of energy. Inside of the shell, 3 women appeared. The first of the 3 had long silver hair that spiked out everywhere. She had pale skin, that seemed to shine in the shell. Her eyes were this stunning shade of gold, that could make a dragon lick its lips in lust. From her head 2 thick horns could be seen poking out. Her ears were pointed and elegant. She was dressed in a light plum kimono with red prayer beads around her neck. On her lips was a light appliance of pink lipstick. The next woman had long flowing light-colored hair, that was simply regal. Her eyes were pale white, and had no pupil. Her skin was also pale, yet didn't shine like the other woman's. In the center of her forehead was a vertical slit. Poking out of her hair was what looked like 2 horns. She was dressed in a simple high-collared Heim-style kimono that was white, and had black commas woven into collar and in the sides. She had a light appliance of purple lipstick on her lips, and her fingernails were painted a royal purple. The last of the 3 women had long black golden blonde hair, that seemed to shine with a supernatural light. Her skin was fair, and blemish-free. Her eyes were large green emeralds, her pupils shining red rubies. The strange thing was the golden arch-like things on her side and back. She was dressed in a white and dark gray kimono, that had a strange pattern going up the front. Around her eyes were thick gold lines. These 3 were Tsubasa or Shinigami, Otsutsuki Kaguya, otherwise known as Princess Kaguya or Cabot Goddess, and Kami, otherwise known as Arceus the goddess of Pokemon. Tsubasa, looking down at Naruto, gently removed the sword from his side. She then removed his shirt and jacket. Her eyes gained a cold fury spotting the many scars covering his body, including what looked like the words demon spawn carved into his chest. She, turning to Kaguya, and spotting the appalled eyes of the woman, said, "He is your one shot at redemption. You see, 13 years ago I sealed the 9-tailed fox inside of him, due to Kami making a mistake during her paperwork, marking him as the Jinchuriki of said fox and my summoner not paying the price with his life. He was then subjected to treatment should ever go through. Tsukuyomi personally witnessed him almost being beaten to death 4 times. Amaterasu witnessed him almost being raped 6 times. I myself witnessed him be starved and he be crucified. What amazes all this is that he hasn't snapped yet, nor has he been corrupted by the evil of life. No, he's still pure as the driven snow." Kami, realizing her mistake a few years ago, instantly started to paperwork to fix her blunder. She, gaining a happy smile on her face, said, "She just finished the paperwork, and now things can be fixed. Kaguya, you have been chosen to be his mother, as his true family left him to fend for himself in that damned village. Kami has been listening to request to introduce a few of your children to this world, and has decided to grant said request, by allowing the Pokemon as a brand new summon, that will go to Naruto. Don't worry, he won't abuse them or anything, in fact he'll probably see this as his family, or precious people, and protect them with his life. Also, could you maybe bless him with the powers of a few legendaries?" Kami, hearing this, smiled and said, "I can, but after Kaguya-san becomes his new mom." Tsubasa, hearing this, smiled and turned to Kaguya, who was already kneeling beside Naruto. She, gently touching one of his whisker marks, said, "He is going to be my new Sochi-kun. Such a strong will, such potential." She, turning to Tsubasa, asked, "Besides informing us of this, and bringing us here, what else is your business here?" Tsubasa, giggling, said, "I'm here to give him the blessing of Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu, Susanoo, Izanami, Izanagi, Yami, Kami, and myself." As you know, that makes all 8 of the eternal deities to give him their blessing, which will turn him into a new god. Also to ask him what he wants to do with the Kyuubi. Kaguya hearing this nodded and asked, "How will I be turning him into my son?" Tsubasa smiling pulled out a very shiny and sharp needle. She said, "With this. It's been blessed by Kami Ne and Izanagi Oji. I simply get some blood from you. It interacts with Kami and Izanagi's power, and hello nurse, it's changed into pure DNA that once introduced to his system will transform him into your new darling baby boy." Kaguya hearing this rolled up the sleeve of her kimono and said, "Then please get to work. As I want to hold my baby for a little while before I'm forced back into that cursed prison my 2 eldest trapped me." Tsubasa nodding, stuck the needle into Kaguya's arm, and drew enough blood to fill the syringe. She removing the needle from Kaguya's arm, smiled when the red blood quickly turned golden. She then sticking the needle directly into Naruto's heart emptied the syringe. Removing the needle, she made the syringe vanish, just as Naruto shot up with wide eyes. He then said, "I'm up Haruno, don't poke me with that flaming kunai." He then blinked when he heard 3 very distinct, and very pretty sounding giggles. He turning his head gasped spotting the 3 women. Naruto was about to ask what was going on, when Kaguya explained everything to him, even who they were. Naruto blinking at this, smiled and wrapped Kaguya in a warm hug and said, "Wow, I must be really lucky to have such a gorgeous woman as my new mom." Kaguya with a tiny blush on her face said, "I am truly the luckiest woman in the world to have such a flatterer for my new and youngest child." He then smiling at her asked, "So I noticed you have the Byakugan like the Hyuga clan. Does this mean I'm going to get it too?" Kaguya shaking her head said, "I'm afraid not, but you will be gaining something much better." Naruto with a curious look on his face asked, "What's better than one of the 3 great dujutsu?" Kaguya smiling said, "The 4th unheard of great dujutsu. Allow me to show it to you." She then closed her eyes and pushed chakra into the slit on her forehead. Naruto gasped when said slit opened up and an eye appeared. This eye was dark red, with 6 large rings surrounding a single round dot. On each of the rings 6 tomo sat, making a total of 36 tomo in the eye. Did he forget to mention that the tomo were snow white? Kaguya opening her eyes smiled and said, "Behold the 4th great dujutsu Kasugan. Eye of Chaos. It has all of the abilities of the other 3 dujutsu, but amplified. For instance, the Byakugan can see almost 360 degrees in every direction, and can see the chakra inside of someone's body. It can see the chakra in the air, and allow you to manipulate the chakra all around you. Another for instance is the Rinnegan allows the user to wield all 5 of the elemental affinities. It allows you to not only do that, but to wield the elements and use the elements of light and shadow." Naruto hearing this said, "Whoa, that totally sounds badass mom." She giggling said, "It is baby. Now Kami-san has something for you." Naruto turning his eyes to Kami, gave her his full attention. Kami smiling said, "Alright Naruto-kun, I have decided to bless you with the powers of a couple of my more powerful exclusive children. The first will be Giratina, my little rebellious princess. She is the ruler of the distorted world, and one of the most feared of my children. Next is Moltres, he's the living embodiment of fire, and is capable of producing flames that put the sun's flames to shame. Then we have Articuno, my little ice queen. She's literally the coldest of my children, and can summon blizzards that could freeze an polar bear. Then we have Kyogre, who is said to have created the oceans, while battling her older brother Groudon. She's literally a titan of the sea, and when she primal reverts she can summon a storm that could flood the lands. Next to last we have Mewtwo, who is one of the most powerful, yet most awkward of my children. Don't get me wrong though, she can crush a mind or anything for that matter with just a thought. Last we have Zekrom, the Pokemon version of the goddess of storms. She has lightning in her control and isn't afraid to use it to get what she wants. She usually sides with the person with ideals. Naruto getting an image of each Pokemon, felt like shitting his pants spotting Giratina, Kyogre and Zekrom. Mewtwo reminded him of a Sasuke, while Moltres and Articuno looked like giant birds to him. Kami smiling said, "You'll be able to meet and work with each of them, since Kami has decided to allow you to exclusive privilege of summoning all of my wonderful children. Do treat them with love and care." Naruto smiling said, "I promise to treat them like they were my own flesh and blood, and I never go back on my promises." Kami giggled hearing this. Tsubasa then stepping forward said, "Now for the last part. Otsutsuki Naruto, you have done something no mortal has ever managed to achieve. You have received not only the blessing of all 8 of the eternal deities but have earned their respect. It is with great honor I welcome you to the position of the 9th eternal deity. It has been decided that you will be the god of carnage, technology and destruction." Naruto hearing this felt his mouth open wide. He shaking his head managed to stand, and bowed deeply. He said, "I am deeply honored Shinigami-sama. I will try my best to not dishonor the 8 eternal deities." Tsubasa giggling said, "I know you will. Anyway, I have a question to ask you?" Naruto blinking asked, "What is it, Shinigami-sama?" Tsubasa pouting said, "First of all call me Tsubasa-chan, or Tsubasa-heim, or at the least Tsubasa-ne. The question is, what do you want to do with the Kyuubi?" Naruto blinking said, "Why does it matter what I want done with Jinx-ne?" Tsubasa smiling said, "Because now that you're an eternal deity she can't stay sealed in you." Naruto hearing this pouted and asked, "Why not Tsubasa-ne?" Tsubasa smiling at him calling her sister said, "Because she wasn't even supposed to be sealed inside of you in the first place." Naruto hearing this, quickly started to think. He getting an idea asked, "Can she be sealed in something else?" Tsubasa tilting her head asked, "Like what?" Naruto pointing to Zabuza's sword asked, "That?" Tsubasa picking up said sword, tossed it a few times and said, "Sure, just as long as promises to be a good girl." Naruto cheered and said, "Yay, now Jinx-ne can stay by my side." Tsubasa giggling waved her hand, and a red orb floated out of Naruto, and slammed into the sword. The sword then transformed from a thick and huge blade, to a simple and elegant katana, with a blood-red blade. Tsubasa then gaining a serious look in her eyes said, "All right Naruto Otuto, we have to go now. Kaguya has to return to the moon, Kami has to return to her dimension and I have to return to the cursed paperwork." Kaguya hearing this wrapped Naruto in a gentle hug and said, "Stop hiding yourself away baby. Show your true skills, and ask out Azuki Uago already. Trust me it'll won't end bad." Naruto nodding said, "Okay mom I will." All 3 women then vanished. Naruto walking over to his new katana, picked it up and said, "Alright Jinx, you heard mom, it's time to pierce the veil." He then closing his eyes took a deep breath, and dropped the shell around him. Feeling the cold water hit his body, he closed his eyes and tried to focus on the power of Moltres, but was finding it really hard to focus with spotting all of the marine life all around him, including a hungry-looking shark. He finally feeling a raging burning inferno inside of his body, tapped into it. His body instantly lit aflame, and he swore he could hear the screech of a large bird. He crouching down, packing all of his chakra into his legs, prepared to jump. He shooting up, quickly breached the surface of the ocean, and was in the air above the bridge. He didn't know it but his entire body was surrounding in a cloak of flames, that had taken on the shape of a bird. He looking down, could see all of Wave, and a little beyond said country in each direction. He then focusing his eyes down, tightened his grip on Jinx spotting Kakashi beating the shit out of Sasuke. Sakura was trying to stop said man. Haku was being held back by Tazuna, who was being held back by Zabuza. The only person who didn't look like they wanted to rip the arrogant Uchiha to pieces was his utterly useless fangirl. He groaning wondered why and how did he ever have a crush on such a useless being. He shaking his head turned his attention to the rather large army moving towards the bridge, led by what looked like a midget. He knowing that this was Gato, smirked spotting the many ships the man had heading towards the bridge. He closing his eyes tried to remember the hand signs for the summoning jutsu. Remembering them, he scraped his finger across one of his larger canine teeth, and went through the hand signs. Slamming his hand down on Jinx's blade he yelled out, "Summoning jutsu." A few puffs of smoke occurred, and when the smoke vanished, on the ground were large light blue and red bipedal alligators, along with large dark blue turtles with cannons in its shell. Naruto activating his powers from Mewtwo sent the mental command to attack the ships coming this way, and that he was Naruto their new summoner. The animals roaring, jumped into the water, well the alligators did. The turtles walked to the end of the bridge and started firing large jets of water out at the ships. He then dropping from his position high in the air, appeared in front of Haku. He dismissing Moltres' power, smirked at the wide eyes of Haku, Tazuna and Zabuza. Haku asked, Naruto-kun? Naruto, striking the nice guy pose, said, Yosh. The one and only, with some improvements. He then, gaining a serious look on his face, turned around and said, Oi Kakashi-sensei, as much as I would like for the Teme to be beaten to within an inch of his life, you're gonna have to wait, as we have an army to deal with. Kakashi, dropping the bloody and bruised Sasuke, turned to Naruto and gained wide eyes, spotting Naruto's eyes. His Kasugan activated, revealing his dark purple eyes, with 3 rings, and 3 tomo on the innermost ring. The tomo of course were snow white. Naruto, spotting his reflection in Kakashi's headband, said, I'll explain later, sensei. He, lifting Jinx onto his shoulder, said, we have business to handle. He, turning to Zabuza, said, time to show everyone why you're called the demon of the hidden mist. Looking at Haku, he said, you don't have to fight if you don't want to. Haku. He, smirking at Tazuna, asked, hey old man, got any sake left? Tazuna, wondering why he asked this, nodded and pulled out a large bottle of said beverage. Naruto's smirk widened as he said, toss it here old man, and you'll see something totally badass. Azuna, tossing Naruto the bottle, blinked when Naruto uncorked it and took a heavy swig of the drink. Naruto's cheeks were bulged out, as he once again tapped into the powers of Moltres and Mewtwo. He, speaking with his mind, said, white fire style, fangs of the great fire dog. Everyone including Sasuke gained wide eyes when out of Naruto's mouth and aura 10 huge fire dogs appeared, snarling and growling. All 10 of them were made of pure white flames, and seemed to be alive. The largest dog, howling, shot forward to attack the now visible army of Gato, the rest soon behind him. Naruto, lifting up Jinx, said, let's cause some mayhem. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A poof of smoke later and 300 Narutos could be seen covering the bridge, each one holding up Jinx and coated in flames. Naruto then shot forward, followed closely by his clones. Zabuza, smiling, pulled out his backup sword and said, I really like this kid. He then charged forward. Kakashi, lifting up his headband, revealed his Sharingan and said, Hokage-sama would kill me if I didn't help Naruto with this. Besides, what kind of big brother and sensei doesn't help his little brother slaughter an army? Haku, putting on her mask, said, I will help my first friend, and will kill my emotions to help him save Wave. She then ran forward, intent on helping Naruto and the others defend Wave. Sakura was being useless and trying to fawn over Sasuke, who was glaring at Naruto with pure hate. Naruto, slicing through a thug, jumped over another one, crushing the man's mind with a thought. Landing, he kicked a man in his gut, making the man turn into a pile of still smoking black ashes. Naruto, tossing a few kunai at some men, said, wind style, tornado slicing blades. Huge blades of wind appeared and started slicing through men, forming large twisters that formed even more blades. He, spotting a clone jump in the air, watched it go through more hand signs. It then called out, fire style, dragon flame jutsu. Another clone not far away cried out, lightning style, lightning dragon jutsu. The lightning dragon hit the twister, made it start shooting out sparks. Naruto, spotting the fire hitting this, cried out, combination jutsu, raging lightning storm. The attack tore through thug after thug, spraying blood everywhere. Naruto, ducking, shoved a sharp kunai into the throat of another thug. Grabbing that thug's head, he pulled with all of his might and pulled out not only the head, but the man's spine also. Sticking his hand in the man's mouth, Naruto started to kill other thugs with the man's spine. Did I forget to mention that Naruto was channeling some lightning chakra through the spine, so the thugs were dying painfully. Naruto, then tossing the spine like a spear, shot forward with a kunai in each hand. Appearing behind a large group of thugs, he tossed the kunai at 2 thugs coming behind Haku just as the thugs all separated from the rest of their bodies. Pretty soon all that was left of the army was Gato. Naruto, Haku, Zabuza, and Kakashi were coated in blood. Some time ago the people of Wave had appeared, and everyone was now standing in a circle around Gato, who was being held down by some Naruto clones. Naruto, walking forward, turned to the people and asked, alright people, what do you guys want to do with this scum? The entire crowd screamed out, kill him. Naruto, hearing this, nodded and said, your wish is my command. He, signaling to his clones, who pushed the man until his head was touching the bridge. Naruto, walking over to the man, climbed up on the shoulders of one of the turtles. He, raising his left hand, said, Gato, for your crimes a jury of your peers have sentenced you to death. There will be no mercy, no second chances. I Otsutsuki Naruto, the god of carnage, technology, and destruction am your executioner. Goodbye. Naruto then jumped into the air and once he was high enough, lifted his left foot and cried out, Taijutsu, curb stomp. He then came down and stomped on Gato's head, crushing it and causing blood and brain matter to explode everywhere. Naruto scowling said, I knew that was a bad idea, but no, I decided to do it anyway. No, I've got a clean brain matter off of my feet. He then turning to the people of Wave smiled and said, Wave, you are now free of the tyranny of Gato. The bridge can be built, and your first steps to peace can be achieved. Rejoice. The people hearing this started to cheer loudly. Next thing, Naruto was being tossed up and down, his name being cheered and praised, Haku, Kakashi, and Zabuza in the same boat. Naruto laughing joyfully said, You're welcome. Kakashi was simply basking in all the attention he was getting, and not being called a pervert. Haku was blushing, and Zabuza was scowling, not liking this one bit. Sasuke was scowling even worse, as in his mind once again the Dobi had shown him up and stepped out of his place. Sakura was scowling as Sasuke was scowling, and she already knew the source of said scowl. She growling said, Naruto baka. I'm gonna punish you for upsetting Sasuke-kun. Tazuna on the other hand was happily chugging from his sake bottle, as he was extremely happy. A week later, Naruto could be seen staring at a rather imposing statue on the completed bridge. It was him standing tall among a pile of bodies, Jinx shining brightly in his right hand, and flames licking at his feet. His Kausugen activated. The strange thing about the statue was the mark on his arm. It was a large C, with what looked like little bugs crawling over it, and ruble around it. This symbol was what the people of Wave had decided his symbol was going to be, and the symbol they were going to worship was going to look like. They had even created some new clothes for him with said symbol in it. He was now wearing an open purple jacket, with black flames on it. On the back was the symbol in bright orange. On each of his hands were black metal plaited fingerless gloves. His pants were purple, with torn out knees, but seemed to be threaded back together with black strings. He had on thick black boots, purple strings making them his. Strapped to his back with a black strap was Jinx. His headband shining proudly on his forehead. Beside him smiling proudly was Kakashi. On his other side smiling fondly at him was Haku. Zabuza on the other hand was reading the words on the statue. Whistling, the man said, This is the statue of our hero. He was drowned in the waters below this very bridge, and was brought back to life. Gaining the powers of a god. Beware all that trespass on this land seeking to do harm. The god of carnage, technology and destruction watches over this land, the land of his rebirth, the land of his first slaughter, land of his religion. He turning to Naruto said, Damn brat, they really took what you said to heart. You know that they're going to start worshipping you even more now, right? Naruto huffing said, Whatever. Let's go to Konoha already, before the fangirls swarm me again. Kakashi giggling said, Welcome to the curse of the being badass Naruto. Naruto ignoring this statement, turned around and walked off of the bridge, walking right by the bruised and limping Sasuke, and the arm in a sling, and talking with a slur Sakura. Haku, who was right behind him, sent a glare at both people, remembering how the two idiots tried to take Naruto's power and kill him for refusing to give it to him. She then giggled, remembering that Naruto did a less powerful version of his curb stomp on the Uchiha, and broke Haruno's arm in 7 different places, then proceeded to shut the girl up by delivering a literally jaw-shattering punch to the girl's face. They had enjoyed peace and quiet for 6 days now. Kakashi behind her pulled out his book, already preparing himself for the earful he was going to get once they got back to Konoha. Zabuza, pulling out his own copy of Kakashi's book, wondered how Naruto was going to get him into Konoha. Haku was going to be no problem, but he was a missing ninja, a powerful one at that. Naruto himself was wondering how his little future genin were going to respond to their boss, Big Brother, being a literal god now. He then stopped and giggled slightly, already picturing the looks on the council's face. He right there swore to bring a camera to record the moments forever. Another week later the group finally arrived in Konoha, yet Sasuke was still limping. This time though he was limping because he tried to have his way with Haku, and not only did Naruto beat the shit out of the boy, but Haku made the boy sterile, and Zabuza was close to sending the boy to the rest of his clan. Luckily for him, Kakashi informed them that he was still needed for the Chunin exams. Naruto also said that the civilian council might flip out if Zabuza killed their precious Uchiha. Naruto, once inside of the village, led Zabuza and Haku to the Hokage's office, Kakashi behind them. Kakashi and Zabuza noticed something though. The people in the village was looking at Naruto with wide eyes, some of them even looking at him with respect. The closer they got to the Hokage tower, the more people started to do it. Haku soon picked up on it, and narrowed her eyes wondering what was going on. Naruto was too deep in his thoughts to notice. He was wondering how was he going to train his Dujutsu, as he couldn't even use any of the Sharingan properties, nor could he use anything of the Rinnegan besides the elements. He had full access to the Byakugan parts. Jinx was just as clueless as he was. She was also pushing him to learn some more sword skills, as she wanted to be used for more than a walking stick. Arriving at the tower, Naruto walked in and was walking up the stairs. Once outside of the doors to the Hokage's office, Naruto snapped out of his thoughts and gained a great big smile. He, kicking open the doors, said, "Oi old man, you might as well give me the hat now, as I'm back not from a C-rank mission but according to Kakashi-sensei a high A to a low S-rank mission." Sarutobi hearing this smiled and said, "I know Naruto." Naruto hearing this blinked and asked, "How do you know?" Sarutobi, pulling out a little black book, opened it to a saved page and tossed it to Naruto. He, catching it, looked at it and gained huge comical eyes. The reason why was because he was looking at a picture of him coated in flames, slicing through a thug with Jinx. Kakashi was looking over his shoulder gaping like a fish. Zabuza was trying very hard not to laugh. Haku on the other hand was very worried for her first friend now. Kakashi then read, Otsutsuki Naruto aka the god of Carnage. Eye color. Natural unknown, believed to have an unknown Dujutsu. Hair color. Platinum blonde or silver. Height. 5 feet 4 inches. Weight. Possibly 160 pounds. Rank. Genin. Elemental affinities. Kanton, Futon, and Raiden. Summonings. Strange turtles with cannons and ferocious bipedal alligators capable of taking down entire ships. Has a sword that has a blood-red tint, and seems to be just getting used to it. Genjutsu. Skills unknown. Taijutsu skills. Unknown, but known to have crushed Gato's head with a move he called the curb stomp. Ninjutsu skills. Rather limited information, but knows the summoning, the shadow clone, a wind jutsu, 2 fire jutsu and a lightning jutsu, all being high-ranked. Can surround himself in flames that resemble a bird. Rank in bingo book. B note is the first genin to ever be put in the bingo book. He is a genin of Konohagakure. Naruto hearing this smiled and said, "Oh yeah. Now you'll surely give me the hat, old man." Sarutobi laughing said, "Maybe when you're placed in there as AS rank, but until then no." Naruto pouting said, "Mean." He shaking his head gained a serious look on his face and said, "Old man Zabuza Momochi, and his daughter Haku Yuko Momochi are becoming Konoha shinobi, or I'll alert the Kunoichi population of a certain crystal ball, that can pierce through anything." Sarutobi hearing this paled and said, "You wouldn't do that to your grandfather, would you?" Naruto snorting said, "Yes, if my grandfather doesn't make my friend and her father Konoha shinobi. And don't even try to call my bluff because I've got clones already in the village with several of the more powerful Kunoichi gathered." Sarutobi hearing this sighed and said, "I knew letting Anko keep watch over you was a bad idea." Naruto making a victory pose said, "Damn right it was, old man. Anko ne taught me everything she knows, along with Ibiki ni and Inochi-san." Kakashi giggled at the pale Sarutobi who asked, "She took you to the T&I department?" Naruto laughing said, "Sure did, claimed it would teach me to respect my elders. Instead it showed them how to get a prisoner to talk in 5 seconds. Last time I checked Ibiki ni was still trying to beat my record." Sarutobi's sweat dropped at this. He then shaking his head, pulled out 2 headbands and tossed them to Haku and Zabuza. He said, "Welcome to Konoha, and Anbu will lead the 2 of you to a home rented for you. Naruto, Kakashi stay, there's something else you 2 need to know." Haku and Zabuza nodding left, of course after Haku gave Naruto a hug. Once they were gone, Sarutobi sighed and said, "Alright Naruto, what I'm about to tell you Kakashi already knows. Please hold all of your questions until I finish." Naruto nodding, didn't even see when Kakashi put his book away. Sarutobi then said, Naruto, you are not an orphan. You are Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina. You were born 13 years ago, when the Kyuubi attack. You have two older sisters, Kion and Akane. You have an older brother named Link, a twin sister named Naruko, and have a younger sister named Natsumi. Yes, that means both Kushina and Minato are alive. While you were away, they came back to the village, and not only did they announce who you really are, but removed you from your apartment. No one knew that they survived, not even me. I am telling you this, because they are in the other room and have heard this entire conversation. Naruto hearing this felt his mind go blank for about 7 seconds. It then kicked back on and he instantly felt a burning hot rage build up inside of him. He could feel Jinx pushing her chakra into her sword. He could also hear her roar about bastards. Naruto, clenching his fist, tried very hard to keep a tight lid on his emotions. That plan shot to hell when the door opened and his supposed family stepped out with large happy smiles on their faces. He, clenching his eyes shut and gritting his teeth, was barely holding his rage down, but he knew Kakashi could feel his rage as the man was right behind him. Kakashi, on the other hand, wasn't even trying to keep his down. He unleashed the full brunt of his killing intent, and glared a hole into the family. Kushina, smiling, walked over to Naruto and said, Hello Naruto-kun. How have you been, Sochi-kun? Hearing this woman say this, was it? Naruto snapped. All of his killing intent along with that of Jinx's flooded not only the tower, but the entire village. Every single living being was brought to its knees at the massive intent to kill. Sarutobi in the office was grabbing his heart, trying to stop the massive heart attack he was getting from the powerful killing intent. Kakashi was trying to catch his breath. Kushina was down on the floor with wide eyes filled with fear. The rest of the Namikaze family was faring no better. Naruto, opening his eyes, revealed his menacing dark purple eyes. His eyes now had 6 tomo on the innermost ring. The pupil was also slitted. He, glaring at Kushina with all the hate he could muster, said, Don't you dare call me that. Kakashi, shaking his head, reached over to Naruto and said, Naruto, stop. You're going to kill the Sadaime. Naruto, capping his killing intent, stood from his chair. Walking to the door, he yanked it open. He, turning to look at Kakashi, said, I'll be in the forest of death if you need me, Kakashi-sensei. Tell Anko-ne this also. He then, slamming the door shut, walked towards the forest of death. Sarutobi, finally being able to breathe, said, Oh dear sweat Kami. I've never felt such monstrous killing intent in my life. Kakashi, getting to his feet, said, That was 10 times worse than the Kyuubi's, and he somehow managed to pull it all back in. Kakashi then ran to the trash can and puked his guts out. Minato, helping a trembling Kushina to her feet, asked, What just happened? Sarutobi, with an you stupid look on his face, was about to answer, when the door was kicked in and a glaring Anko appeared, with a kunai in each hand, and snakes hissing from her sleeves. She, looking around, asked, Why did I just sense Naruto's killing intent, and what the hell got him so upset to unleash it? Kakashi finished puking, wiped his mouth and pointed to the Namikaze family. Anko's eyes, landing on them, narrowed her eyes. She instantly understood what had happened. She, ignoring Kushina, who used to be a big sister figure to her, turned and asked, Where did he go? Kakashi said, Forest of Death. Anko, sighing, said, Oh great, now it's going to take me all day to find him. Damn brat knows the forest better than I do. She, turning to Sarutobi, said, Old man, I'm going to need some money for ramen and dango. Sarutobi, sweat drooping, handed Anko a card and said, That links to my personal account. Don't you dare bankrupt me. I still need to eat. Anko, smiling too brightly, said, You bet, old man, I'll buy you dango too. She was then gone in a swirl of leaves, leaving a cursing Sarutobi behind. Sarutobi, shaking his head, turned to the Namikaze family and with a cold glare said, Now you can start explaining to Kakashi and myself why you left him in this village. Minato, sitting Kushina down on the couch, turned to him and said, Well, you see, it's like this. When it was finished, Kakashi was looking at Minato and his family with eyes that said, You're the most idiotic man in existence, and I hope Naruto kills you, for his revenge. Sarutobi, on the other hand, was repeatedly banging his head on his desk. He, ending his little rock concert, he said, Namikaze Minato, That is the most idiotic thing I have ever heard. You leave your son, the one you decided to seal the Kyuubi into, to the mercy of this village, all because you were terrified the Shinigami would come and kill your family for cheating it out of death. Not only that, but you trained said boy's twin sister to cage level and then decide to come back, after Kushina gives birth to another girl. Minato with a sheepish grin said, yup. They blinked hearing someone snort. All eyes turning to the door blinked spotting a bruised and dirt-covered Anko leaning into the door. She with the eye swollen shut said, Naruto is going to kill you, if any of you ever come near him. She then limping into the room followed by a concerned Kurenai, plopped down in the empty seat and asked, Kakashi, did my little brat really become a fucking god? Kakashi shrugging said, I honestly had no idea, I was just grateful that he was alive. I forgot to ask him what happened to him. Sarutobi looking at Anko asked, why? Anko groaning said, because like a baka I decided to entice him into a fight. I've never had such a thorough ass kicking in my entire life. I mean at first he was just using his fist and speed, but pretty soon I was dodging swipes from that sword of his, that sliced through 7 trees. I tried to block one of his swings with a kunai, and my hand nearly paid the price for such foolishness. He then started slinging out jutsu that I know for a fact are probably be ranked S rank, and if they aren't they should be. I mean he damned near drowned me when he summoned a massive tidal wave. I got burns in places that fire should never approach. I'm pretty sure my nipples are still swollen from how much lightning I got hit with. My leg is still trying to thaw out from when he nearly froze my legs. She then popping a joint in her shoulder said, the craziest thing was that he kept vanishing and reappearing in front or behind me, before hitting me with an attack. Hell, I couldn't even sense him move, like he wasn't even using chakra. He even made me witness many different things. He made me witness him making me beg, scream and moan for him too. Kurenai put her hand over Anko's mouth and said, Anko, there are children in here. Anko moving her eyes to Kurenai, licked her hand, forcing Kurenai to move it. Anko looking Kakashi in the eyes said, I'm just glad he doesn't have full control over his dujutsu, or I'm pretty sure I'd be in a hospital right now, instead of him sleeping inside of his room at the T&I department. Sarutobi quirking an eyebrow asked, you managed to defeat him? Anko snorting said, no he damn after stomping a mudhole into me, and making me feel like shit, decided to sleep off his extreme anger. Damn brat fell asleep standing in front of me. Kakashi giggling said, be lucky he didn't curve stomp you, like he did the Uchiha brat. Sarutobi then said, so that's why he was limping. Kakashi shaking his head said, oh no he's limping because he decided to try and force himself on Haku. Naruto broke the boy's leg in 6 different places, then kicked the boy in the balls so hard, he actually lifted into the air a little. Haku then made sure the little shit wouldn't be having any children by sterilizing him. Zabuza was oh so close to ending the boy's life. Sarutobi crossed his legs and asked, what about the Haruno? Kakashi giggling said, Naruto got tired up putting up with her and not only broke her arm in 9 different places, but then shattered her jaw with a punch. So I think he was holding back on you Anko or you'd be in a coma or worse right now. Anko groaning said, I believe it. Sarutobi was about to say something when his front door was kicked open by 3 kids, all looking like mini Narutos. Hell, they even had some orange on them. Konohamaru spotting Anko asked, Anko nay where's boss, and don't even try to fool us by saying that he isn't in the village because we felt his killing intent. Sarutobi hearing this blinked and asked, how is it that you 3 know what killing intent is? Moegi bowing to him said, Naruto ni has been training us after school. He introduced us to killing intent so that we wouldn't freeze up if we were ever came across it. He also started us on the tree climbing exercise along with making sure we understood a shinobi's greatest tool. Kakashi hearing this blinked and asked, what is a shinobi's greatest tool? Udon pushing up his glasses said, a shinobi's greatest tool is deception. Kurenai blinked asked, he told you this? All 3 kids smiling said, boss, big brother told us that Kakashi said something like look underneath the underneath and that hiding your skills and powers from within the shadows was one way to deceive the enemy. Kakashi nodding sagely said, that is definitely something I would say to Naruto. Konohamaru deadpanning said, boss also said you told him something about Hyugas always having a big chest and the quiet ones being the loudest in bed. Kakashi hearing this gained wide eyes and paled as the temperature in the room dropped drastically. Anko somehow on her feet with a powerful glare in her eyes cracked her knuckles and with a sickly sweet smile on her face asked, "Kakashi Baka, you'd better not be trying to corrupt my innocent, darling little Naruto." Kakashi quickly said, "Hokage-sama, let him read his version of Icha, Icha." Sarutobi hearing this gulped as Anko and Kurenai were now both giving him a powerful glare. He then witnessed Kakashi vanish in a poof of smoke. He nearly cried when Konohamaru said, "If Icha, Icha is that orange book the old man reads all the time, then he let me read it too." Moegi hearing this said, "Hey Kono, let's go find big brother." Udon somehow knowing that the Sadaimi was about to be beaten said, "Yes, let's go find boss." The three kids then left, ignoring the pleading eyes of Sarutobi as Kushina, Kion, Akane, Anko, Kurenai and the purple-haired Enbu slowly descended upon him. Minato, Link, Kakashi, Naruto, and a curious Natsumi wisely left the room. Later in the day, Naruto could be seen sitting on the stool in his favorite food place in the village. Jinx was attached to his back, as he stirred his ramen with his chopsticks, not paying attention to much around him. He was deep in thought trying to process what he had learned. He was also slightly happy that he had unlocked more power of the Kasugan. He could now predict movement like the Sharingan, and had unlocked the animal path of the Rinnegan. Sighing, he slipped a few noodles into his mouth, just as he felt someone sit beside him. Moving his eyes to his left, he let a small smile appear on his face, spotting Kakashi. Kakashi, ordering a bowl of ramen, said, "Alright Naruto, it's time for that explanation I never got." Naruto smirking said, "Not until the others arrive." Kakashi quirking an eyebrow, blinked when Anko, Ibiki, Inochi, Ino, Zabuza, Haku, Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon, Kurenai, Hinata, Guy, Rock Lee, Neji, Kiba, Shino, Iruka, Shikamaru, Choji, Tenten, Asuma, Yuago, Hayate and surprisingly a perfectly fine Sarutobi. Once everyone was there, Naruto said, "Ayame-chan, close up the stand. This is something you're gonna wanna hear." Ayame nodding closed the shop along with Tucci. Once everyone was seated, Naruto crossed his arms and said, "What I'm about to tell you is 100% true. No one interrupt me until I'm finished and then I'll be glad to answer any questions." Now what Kakashi, Zabuza and Haku most likely know that you guys don't is that during Team 7's mission, I was technically drowned by Uchiha Sasuke. During this time I was confronted by three gorgeous women. The first being the goddess of death herself, Tsubasa. Next was the mother of the sage of six paths, Otsutsuki Kaguya. Then there was Kami, or the goddess of my summons, the Pokemon, Arceus. I was woken up by Tsubasa using a syringe full of Kaguya's blood, that with the help of divine forces, expunged all human DNA inside of me, and transplanted her DNA inside of me. This making me Otsutsuki Naruto. I was also blessed with the powers of a few of Kami's very powerful children. Finally Tsubasa informed me that I was now a member of the Eternal Council of Deities. I did this by becoming the god of carnage, technology and destruction. Sadly she had to remove Jinx to do so, and for those of you who don't know, Jinx is the true name of the Kyuubi. Happily Jinx was able to be sealed inside of my new sword, which used to be Zabuza's sword. I gained my Dujutsu from Kaguya, who is my mom now. It's the 4th grade Dujutsu that has all of the powers of the other 3. It's fully evolved from has 36 tomo and 6 rings. So far I only have 3 rings and 6 tomo. This gives me the abilities of the Byakugan, and recently unlocked the predicting ability of the Sharingan, and one of the 6 paths of the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan, by the way, gives me full access to all elemental affinities. Everyone hearing this had wide eyes. He with a smile on his face asked, "Any questions?" Ino shooting her hand into the air asked, "What are Pokemon, and what powers did you get from them?" Naruto laughing and sipping some of his ramen said, "Pokemon are very intelligent beings from a distant dimension governed by Kami. They come in all shapes and sizes, and their power levels range from that of an academy student, to that of a tailed beast. Most of the ones that could rival a tailed beast in power are legendary or rare. I will tell you the powers I got from them. First let me inform you that Kami-chan gave me the powers of only legendaries. The first of said legendaries was the ghost, dragon ruler of the alternate dimension of the Pokemon dimension. Her name is Giratina, and she has 2 forms. I think Kami-chan called her a rebellious princess or something. When I tap into her power I can create rifts in the world, and teleport to a pocket dimension. I can also seal or trap things inside of said pocket dimension. Then we have the living embodiment of Fire Moltres who can create flames so hot, they put the flames of the sun to shame. Kakashi, Zabuza, Haku, Anko and Wave have already witnessed me use her power. Then there's her Arctic sister, Articuno, who could create blizzards so strong it could freeze a polar bear. Anko has had the pleasure of witnessing me using her power. Then we have Kyogre who can create entire oceans with just a swing of one of her mighty fins. With her power I can create entire aquatic ecosystems, and if I tapped into her primal powers, flood the world. There's Mewtwo, who's very powerful, yet equally as awkward. She has power over the mind, and can crush a being's mind with a simple though. With her power I can speak with my mind, move objects using telekinesis, crush someone's mind, and most likely turn someone into my living breathing puppet. Kakashi, Zabuza and Haku witnessed me use a little of her power. Lastly is Zekrom, who according to Kami is the Pokemon version of the Goddess of Storms. She has lightning in her power and from what I've read from her profile under the summoning contract can bring entire mountains down with a single lightning bolt. Everyone hearing this paled, well everyone besides Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon, who were looking at Naruto with stars in their eyes. Haku asked, if you're part of the Eternal Deity Council, does that make you the youngest member? Naruto nodding said, yes, the eldest being Izanagi and Izanami, though I wouldn't be foolish enough to call Izanami-sama old to her face. Zabuza ignoring this asked, are you going to use the symbol the people of Wave made as your official symbol? Naruto shrugging said, I don't see why not for now. Anko asked, are any of your summons big enough to, I don't know, stop a raging Biju? Naruto sighing said, size really doesn't matter when it comes to the Pokemon, but including Kami herself, 18. Everyone hearing this blinked. Kurenai asked, you said size doesn't matter, why not? Naruto smiling at her making her gain a small blush said, leave it to the Genjutsu mistress to hear that. Mewtwo can crush anything with her mind, including Konoha if she wants. Articuno can freeze entire oceans if so much as thinks about it. Darkrai can trap you in a never-ending nightmare if she wants. Suicune can blast you with purified high-pressure chilled water stream if she wanted to. Hell Moltres could melt you if you pissed her off, and the same could be said for any Pokemon. Asuma hearing this asked, how many Pokemon are there? Naruto blinking said, 720. Everyone gasped hearing this and shouted, that many? Naruto nodding said, yes. Sarutobi asked, do you want me to inform the council of any of this? Naruto snorting said, you can tell them all of this for all I care. There's not a thing they can do about it. Inochi groaning said, damn, this is going to cause one long meeting. Naruto laughed at this. Ayame then asked, are you going to let your teammates know this? Naruto snorting said, no chance in hell. Kiba laughing asked, are you afraid the Uchiha will demand that you make him a god? Naruto laughing said, no, I'd rather make out with a Kumaru than do that. I'm afraid what the pink howler monkey is going to do once she finds out. Akumaru hearing this barked and growled. Kiba laughing said, that's his point, Akumaru. Hayate coughing a little asked, are you going to let your god status go to your head? Naruto snorting said, hell no, I'm still trained until I drop. Rest a little, get up and train even more. Just because I become a god, doesn't mean I'm going to let my skills drop. Guy gaining flames in his eyes said, Yosh. Naruto-kun's flames of youth burn brightly. I must run 1,000 laps around Konoha on my hands until I catch up to him. Lee shooting up shouted, Naruto-kun, you are now my eternal rival. Naruto, who had been sipping some more of his ramen, made the mistake of asking, I'm sorry, did you say something? Lee hearing this gained unholy flames in his eyes along with Guy. Both men then shouted, curse you and your hip attitude, my eternal rival. Naruto blinking at this, turned to everyone else and asked, what the hell just happened? Kakashi patting Naruto on his back said, the other curse of being so badass, Naruto. Weird is declaring you as their eternal rival and always challenging you to even weirder contest. Yuago asked, do you need help with your Kenjutsu training? Naruto rolling his eyes said, I was going to ask you, Hayate or no brows about helping me later, to get Jinx Nate to stop nagging me. Shikamaru hearing this smiled and said, now you see my plight. Naruto snorting said, no, Shika, women aren't troublesome, older sisters are troublesome. I mean look at me, I have 8 of them, and 6 of them are gods. 1 is a demon, and the last is Anko. Anko hearing this said, hey. Naruto waving his hand said, don't try to front, we all know that out of 8 of my sister you're the most sane, and that's pushing it. Anko pouted at this, while everyone else giggled. Konohamaru asked, boss, will you be teaching us any awesome jutsu? Naruto looking at him said, that depends on if you 3 can stay out of trouble. Pay attention to Iruka's lectures, what elemental affinities you have, and if you 3 can climb trees using just your feet yet. Iruka hearing this gained wide eyes and asked, it was you who taught them how the tree climbing exercise. Naruto turning to him nodded and said, yeah, I taught it to them, to get them to stop bugging me. Iruka sweat dropping hearing this said, well they can climb trees using only their feet. Shino pushing up his shades asked, are there any bug-like Pokemon? Naruto smiling at Shino said, Shino my comrade, there's an entire type dedicated to bugs. Hell, there's even a legendary bug Pokemon. Shino actually smiled hearing this. Kakashi then asked, are you going to keep putting Sasuke and Sakura in their place? Naruto finishing his ramen said, is the old man a pervert? Sarutobi choking on his ramen, glared at Naruto, when Yuago, Kurenai, and Anko all said, he sure is. Naruto and the others laughed at this. Neji then asked, what are you going to do about the Namikaze family? Naruto gaining a passive face said, nothing, as I'm no longer part of that family. I am Otsutsuki Naruto. He then turning to Sarutobi said, by the way, I'm gonna need my stuff put back in my apartment. Sarutobi nodding said, I'll hire a genin team to do so. Naruto snorting said, fine, just don't hire Team 7 to do so, or a certain secret will be told to a few certain high-ranked kunoichi of the village. Sarutobi blanching said, I wasn't even considering hiring Team 7 for the mission. In fact, Team 10 will be doing the mission tomorrow morning. Naruto nodding said, good. Until then I'll be sleeping at the tower, or maybe in one of the interrogation rooms. Ibiki hearing this smiled and said, speaking of, I finally beat your record, brat. Naruto hearing this quirked an eyebrow and asked, really, by how much? Anko smirking said, 1 second. Naruto laughed at this, and Ibiki gained a little black cloud over his head. Naruto shaking his head, stood to his feet and put his hand over his mouth to stop the yawn he felt coming. Shaking his head he said, alright people, it's getting late, so I'll see you party people later. He then walked out the ramen stand. The others finishing their ramen and paying up, all went their separate ways, some thinking about a certain blonde, others wondering how things was going to change from here. The next morning, Naruto could be seen walking towards Training Ground 7, intent on getting some training in. Of course he was heading there very early, hell, the sun had barely even poked its head out. He arriving at his location, took off his shirt and jacket, placing them on one of the logs, he popped his muscles and said, I'll start with some push-ups and crunches. Then I'll do some sprints. I'll work on my hand sign speed while doing the sprints and push-ups. Gotta get them down to 1, so the Teme can't copy any of my jutsu when he does unlock the Sharingan. He then got to work, and before long 2 hours had passed and it was now 6. He standing up said, Lee, I know you're there, so let's spar for a while until it's time for you to meet your team. Lee appearing said, Yosh. I accept your challenge, Naruto-kun. I will give it my all. Naruto rolling his eyes said, yeah, whatever, let's just go. He and Lee then vanished and an intense spar was soon rocking the training ground. When Sakura appeared an hour later, she was now perfectly fine. Her eyes widened spotting the damage done to the training ground, and 2 people locked hands inside a deep hole near the center. She in her delusional mind thinking that this was Sasuke finally putting Naruto Baka in his place ran over to the hole and gained wide eyes. Naruto could be seen standing there, sweat dripping down his body, his Kausugan activated and locked on Lee, who was equally sweaty and trying to punch Naruto. Naruto gritting his teeth said, damn Lee. You're really making me sweat. Lee smiling said, as are you, Naruto-kun. Exactly as I expected from my eternal rival. Naruto then started to push more chakra into his body, feeling Lee doing the same. Sakura was blasted away by the immense chakra both boys were putting out. Naruto's being a dark red, almost the color of blood, while Lee's was the normal blue. Sasuke, who arrived seconds after Sakura, was scowling at this, not believing what the Dobi was doing. Kakashi then appearing, blinked, spotting Naruto and Lee not too far from him. He wasn't surprised when Guy and his genin appeared. Guy, spotting Naruto and Lee, said, "Yosh. These two are stroking their flames of youth. Look at how intense Naruto-kun's eyes are." Neji, rolling his eyes, said, "Guy-sensei, stop speaking of the flames of youth." Tenten wasn't saying a word, because she was too busy drooling at Naruto's muscled upper body. Kakashi, realizing that he needed to break this little spar up, said, "Yo Naruto. The fangirls are coming." Naruto, hearing this, quickly separated himself from Lee, appeared behind Kakashi and asked, "Where are those cursed beings coming from?" Kakashi, eyes smiling, said, "I was just kidding Naruto, because if they were really coming I'd already be gone. Now come on, let's go get a D-rank mission." Naruto, moving from behind Kakashi, placed his hands behind his head and said, "Sure Kakashi-sensei, but we'd better not be chasing Tora again." Kakashi, now reading his book, said, "We're not." He then walked out of Training Ground 7, Naruto right beside him, followed by an scowling Sasuke, and a angry Sakura. 4 days later, and Naruto was chasing Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon, as he was helping the three with their speed, by playing a game of ninja with them. Sakura had said something rude, but Naruto had pulled a Kakashi on her, making her very upset. Anyway, the three kids had just turned the corner when the sound of something colliding with something else could be heard. He then heard Konohamaru say, "Ow, that hurt." Moving around the corner, his eyes narrowed, spotting some boy from Suna, with a black hood on that had cat ears, holding Konohamaru up by his long blue scarf. This boy had purple lines on his face that strangely looked like makeup. Standing behind him with a bored look on her face was a blonde-haired girl, with a huge fan on her back. The makeup boy, growling, said, "That hurt you, little twerp." The girl said, "Put him down, Kankuro, we don't have time for this." Kankuro said, "Don't worry Tamari, I'm just going to teach the little brat a lesson." Tamari, sighing, said, "Whatever, just don't get me in trouble." Kankuro, smirking at this, lifted his fist to hit Konohamaru when he felt the edge of a sharp blade be pressed to his throat. He then heard someone growl out, "I suggest you put my little brother down before I slit your throat, Sand Nen." Kankuro, dropping Konohamaru, blinked when the boy stuck his tongue out at him and said, "Boss just told you, punk." Kankuro, hearing this, felt his blood boil, but before he could do anything he heard Tamari say, "Kankuro, you idiot, I told you not to do anything stupid, but you didn't want to listen, and now the fucking god of Carnage has his sword at not only your throat but mine's too." Kankuro, hearing this, slowly turned his head and blanched, spotting the Kasugan staring at him. Naruto, removing his sword from Kankuro's throat, said, "You should listen to your pretty older sister from now on, Catman. Otherwise your blood will spill onto the streets of Konoha." Naruto, turning his head to the tree, said, "Ichibi no Gaara, I know that you're in that tree. Come out now and I won't show you just why a tanuki should never anger a dragon." Both Sand siblings' eyes widened when Gaara appeared, bowed low in front of Naruto. Gaara said, "Forgive me, my lord. I had no idea or intention to anger you. My idiot teammate also apologizes for getting in the way of your game with your little brother." Naruto, blinking, said, "Yeah, whatever." He then, turning to Konohamaru, said, "Alright Kono, because of your failure at not being aware of your surroundings, the three of you now have to play a game of dodge with Anko, after listening to Iruka's lecture about awareness." All three kids groaned hearing this, and walked towards the academy. Naruto, walking behind them to make sure they got the academy, turned to the Sand siblings and said, "I look forward to meeting you three in the Chunin exams. Until then, Tamari of the desert, Kankuro of the puppets, and Gaara of the desert." He then walked around the corner, missing the wide eyes of Kankuro, the smile on Gaara's face, and the small blush on Temari's face. He, arriving at the bridge for his team meeting, wasn't surprised to find Sakura there pestering Sasuke for a date, while said boy brooded. Naruto, sitting down on the rails of said bridge, pulled out Jinx and started to polish her, ignoring the now screeching Sakura. The girl never shut her yap, and honestly Naruto wanted to curb stomp her, but Kakashi had made him promise not to do so unless she did something really stupid. Sasuke on the other hand he had free rein with. He had already kicked the arrogant prick's ass 6 times, and 5 of those times he was half asleep. He sensing Kakashi arrive stood up and put Jinx over his shoulder. Kakashi appearing in a swirl of leaves looked up from his book and smiled spotting Naruto and the other 2. He pulling out 3 sheets of paper handed it to them and said, "I have put you 3 in the Chunin exams. Meet at room 301 if you want to take the exam. Even if you don't, I'm proud of you guys." He then vanished. Naruto snorting at this, decided that he would spend some time with Yuago, or maybe Kurenai. Vanishing in a small blizzard he appeared in Training Ground 8. Spotting Kiba, Shino and Hinata walking away he wondered where Kurenai was. He closing his eyes tapped into his psychic powers. Reaching out with his mind, he blinked finding Kurenai's mind not far away trying to push some emotional pain away. Appearing beside her, he sat down on the log and asked, "What's wrong Kurenai-sensei?" Kurenai turning to him, tried to wipe the tears from her eyes and said, "Nothing's wrong." Naruto frowning gently grabbed her hand and said, "You know I hate it when you lie to me." Kurenai hearing this sighed and said, "I was going to tell Asuma how I felt about him, when I walked in on him making out with Haruno Mibiki." Naruto scowling said, "It broke your heart didn't it?" She turning away said, "Yes, my heart feels like it's breaking into a million different pieces." Naruto sighing, said, "You can lean on my shoulder to cry if you want." Kurenai shaking her head said, "No, I need to be a strong kunoichi." Naruto rolling his eyes said, "Bullshit. You need to let your emotions out, or they'll just boil over at the most unfortunate time. Hence why Anko Ne and myself always pick fights with each other, letting us relieve any pent-up emotions we may have." Kurenai hearing this giggled and said, "Is that why she's been covered in bruises for the past week?" Naruto snorting said, "She's not the only one with bruises." He lifting up his shirt, revealed his chiseled upper body. A large bluish bruise on the center of his chest, along with a small bruise over his right rib. She gasping asked, "How many bruises do you have?" Naruto laughing said, "Those are the only 2, because I've been working on my regenerative powers. It seems as though I can heal myself with ease as long as it's within 5 minutes from my last healing. Haku-chan has a theory that since I'm the god of Carnage, then if I slaughter an army of something like that, then maybe I'll heal even faster." Kurenai hearing this sighed and asked, "Am I pretty Naruto?" Naruto blinked hearing this and said, "Kurenai-sensei, you're one of the most gorgeous women I have ever seen. Not only are you intelligent but you're a dedicated Jonin-sensei, and not afraid to put a pervert in their place. You have a beauty that most people would kill to have, yet you don't have a bit of arrogance inside of you. Your ruby red eyes sparkle in the light, yet when they need to be, can be like ice-cold lakes. Your flawless alabaster skin, that sometimes twinkles in the light. Your long wavy black hair, that could captivate the entire world." He didn't know it but his sincere words was causing a huge blush to appear on Kurenai's face. He turning to her noticed the blush but chose to ignore it. He smiling asked, "You wanna hear a song I've been working on Kurenai-sensei?" She shaking her blush away said, "Sure, just as long as it's not perverted." He smiling reached into his pocket and pulled out his black Gibson guitar. He then getting it ready took a deep breath and said, "I hope you enjoy this song Kurenai-sensei. It's called Walk on Water or Drown, by Mayday Parade I don't own. Well, this hurts me more than I can stand to say. In just one sitting, you left the room so I can pray. So I'll pace the halls to see if I could find a hole in something. Or maybe places to escape. Oh, but everybody knows this is the part of breaking down in anybody's arms. I'm reaching down and hoping this one's ours. God please, please let this stay." And then I fell into pieces, and she fell into me. Saying, "Play this song. It's been too long since I've heard you sing. You got here just in time to let me know I was worth saving. It's nothing more than for the heart. Too proud to breathe. But I'm too scared to say the things worth saying. Who knew this trip would be this hard? As I'm looking to the sky to count the stars, I wonder if you see them where you are. I'm down on both my knees and pray tomorrow brings no pain." And then I feel into pieces, and she fell into me. Saying, "Play me a song. It's been too long since I've heard you sing to me. And yeah, we all fall to pieces. But at least you fell to me. But this is a wrong night. So tell me good night and let it go. I stayed here and you just pray. My head would clear and I'd stay safe. The pieces left, the love had changed, just saved everything. Oh, and everybody knows this is the part of breaking down in anybody's arms. I'm reaching down and hoping this one's ours. God, please let this stay. And then I fell into pieces and she fell into me, saying, play me a song. It's been too long since I've heard you sing. And then I fell into pieces and she fell into me, saying, play me a song. It's been too long since I've heard you sing. And yeah, we all fall to pieces. But at least you fell to me. But this is a wrong night. Tell me good night and let it go. Oh. Naruto ending the song, blinked, spotting not only Kurenai, but Anko, Yuago, Ino, Hinata, Moegi, Ayame, Haku and Tenten all swooning over him. He sweat dropping said, okay, maybe I overdid it. Ino then squealed very loudly and tried to glomp him. He switching with a random log said, on that note I'll be taking my leave. Exit stage left. He then ran for his life, a group of swooning females behind him, one of them being a kunai flicking Anko. He finally arriving at his apartment, locked the doors, shut the windows, and placed a few chakra seals to keep people out. Sighing in relief, he took off his shirt, and placed Jinx against his wall. Heading towards the kitchen, he rolled his eyes spotting the ramen bowl from Namikaze Kushina. He tossing it into the trash, reached into his fridge and pulled out a carton of orange juice, 3 eggs, a thick piece of bacon, and some carrots. He fixing himself a small dinner, simply ate his meal. Once done eating, he walked into his bathroom. Taking off the rest of his clothes, he climbed into the hot shower. Washing the dirt and grime off, he closed his eyes and let the hot water pour down on his platinum blonde hair. Once done with his shower, he turned it off. Walking into his bedroom, he opening his bedroom dresser slipped on a pair of purple Carnage boxers. He then walked over to his desk. Opening a drawer, he pulled out a small tube. Opening it, he willed the shiny substance out of the tube and made it dance a little. He smiling said, it seems as my nanobots are forming rather nicely. Soon they will be complete and I'll be bringing new technology to the world. He putting the nanobots back into the tube, corked it and put it back into the drawer. He then yawning said, it's time to get some sleep. He turning off the lights, crawled into his bed. The next morning he would roll over and nuzzle his face into the soft warm pillow his face was buried in. He then heard someone moan. His mind instantly kick-started, as pillows weren't warm, nor did they moan. Back flipping out of his bed, he got in a stance ready to kill the intruder. He sweat dropped spotting Kurenai laying in his bed, dressed in black lace matching pair of bra and panties. Shaking his head, he walked into his bathroom and sweat dropped even more spotting Anko and Yuago knocked out in his bathtub snuggled up to each other. Shaking his head, he brushed his teeth and took a piss. Walking back into his bedroom, he got dressed. He then walking into his kitchen, nearly face-palmed spotting Ino, Hinata, Tenten and Ayame all passed out on the floor surrounding his kitchen table. Shaking his head, he tiptoed to his fridge and opened it. Grabbing a toaster pastry, he grabbed Jinx and placed her on his back. He was about to walk out his door when he remembered his new invention to pass time and to help ignored the pink-haired banshee. Creeping into his room, he gently slid open his drawer and pulled out an iPod with black headphones. Putting it into his pocket, he then walked outside of his apartment, not even wanting to know how all 7 females managed to get into his locked and sealed apartment. He arriving at the academy, rolled his eyes seeing no one there yet. Walking to the academy wall, he put the headphones in his ears and turned to iPod on. Picking one of his recorded songs, he started to hum, "You have no idea how unproductive it is to fall in and out of you as often as I do. Lately I've been feeling gray, but today I won't wind up next to you." His was the day the Chunin exams began, and Naruto showed the world why he was the god of carnage, technology and destruction. 2 hours later, Sakura and Sasuke finally arrived to find Naruto with his eyes closed leaning against the academy wall bobbing his head listening to his music. Sakura scowling marched over to him to make the baka acknowledge her and Sasuke, when she heard a deep terrifying growl. She looking around wondered what had growled at her, when her eyes landed on something crouched directly above Naruto's position. Her eyes widened spotting a black dog with a tan belly and paws. Its eyes were dark red, almost a crimson. From its head twin thick silver horns could be seen sticking out. Swaying behind it was a black tailed with a spade for the tip. Sasuke, having better eyes than Sakura, could see the silver bone-like fragments on the dog's back. He could also see the smoke rafting from the beast. Naruto, opening his left eye, said, "About time you two got here. I've been waiting for at least 2 hours." He, shaking his head, sat up and snapped his fingers. The beast, stopping its growling, hopped down to stand beside Naruto. Naruto, petting the beast, said, "Come on before I decided to let Mira turn you into lunch." Mira, wagging her tail, happily followed Naruto, a scowling Sasuke behind her and a terrified Sakura behind him. Team 7 entering the academy walked until they came to large commotion. Naruto, hearing Mira bark, glanced at the door and said, "Very good girl. Remind me to give you a treat later." Mira, barking, wagged her tail. Naruto, then spotting Sasuke about to open his big mouth, grabbed the boy by his head and hissed, "Keep your mouth shut, Uchiha, or I'll end your pathetic existence, and then maybe Makotoheim will finally be proud of the trash her weakest is." Sasuke, hearing this, felt his anger boil, but decided to heed Naruto's words. Naruto, seeing this, let the Uchiha go, and silently walked upstairs, Mira and his teammates right behind him. Reaching the next floor, Naruto walked right past the still reading Kakashi, followed by a once again arrogant Sasuke, and a terrified Sakura. Mira stopped outside of the door for about 5 seconds to look Kakashi over. She, barking, walked inside. Kakashi, sweat dropping, mumbled, "Even his summons think I'm a pervert." Once inside of the room, Naruto sighed, feeling and hearing someone approaching him very fast. His nose catching the smell of flowers and strawberries, sighed again, knowing that he was about to be glomped by Ino. Sure enough, not a moment later, Ino was attached to him, nuzzling his face while saying, "Naruto-kun, I've missed you so much." Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, "That's funny considering that I saw you this morning passed out around my kitchen table, and again as your team entered the academy." No pouting, said, "You're no fun." Naruto, snorting, said, "On the contrary, I'm very fun. It's just that right now you're causing a scene, attracting unnecessary attention to us." Ino blinked, hearing this. She, looking around the room, could see the many genin glaring at her. She, blushing, stopped hugging Naruto and said, "Sorry, Naruto-kun." Naruto, sighing, said, "It's okay, Ino, as the pink banshee or duck butt was bound to get their attention anyway." He, feeling a very pitiful amount of killing intent come from behind him, quirked an eyebrow and turned to find a furious Sakura glaring daggers at him. He was about to say something about this, when a monotone voice asked, "Is she bothering you, Naruto-sama?" Naruto, turning his head again, blinked, spotting Gaara standing beside him glaring at Sakura, his 2 siblings right beside him. Naruto, turning back to Sakura, asked, "Did I offend you, howler monkey?" Sakura, hearing another insult be thrown at her, was about to punch him, when a low growl reached her ears. She, blanching, slowly turned to find Mira once again glaring at her, smoke now literally rolling off of the hound. She, gulping loudly, said, "Nope. I like being called a howler monkey and a pink-haired banshee." Naruto smirked at this, but sensing someone trying to sneak up on him, quickly spun around with Jinx poised at the threat's throat. His Dujutsu activated, was glaring hard at a pale and sweating Kabuto. Kabuto, raising his hands, said, "Easy there, buddy, we're on the same side here." Naruto, hearing this, narrowed his eyes and put Jinx back on his back. He then said, "Be very lucky, fool, that Jinx doesn't want your pathetic blood to touch her blade, or your head would be rolling on the floor." Kabuto, now gulping, said, "Alright, I was just gonna offer you guys some info if you want." Naruto, looking Kabuto in the eyes, asked, "Info eh? Tell, what do you know of Temari's romantic history, the chesty blonde from Kumo's fighting style, the cute red head from Kusa's sensory skills, and the hot blue-haired girl from AIM?" Kabuto, blinking, pulled out his ninja cards, ignoring the blush on Temari's face, the questioning look from Samui, the hearts in Karen's eyes and Conan's eyes narrowing. He then said, "Temari of the desert. Let's see, she's had no boyfriends or girlfriends. In fact, she doesn't even have any friends due to her father being the case cage, her brother being a demon, and her other brother being accused of being a cross-dresser." He, ignoring the killing intent coming from Kankuro, said, "Samui of Kumo uses the Cloud Headhunter Kenjutsu style, and is not known to use any style of taijutsu." Samui, hearing this, returned to her cold facade. He, flipping through the cards, said, "Karen Uzumaki has amazing sensory skills." is said to be able to sense exactly what kind of chakra a person has from miles away. Karen still had hearts in her eyes as she stared at Naruto. Kabuto, pulling out the last card, said, Conan of Aim, also known as the Angel of Aim, has an unknown bloodline that allows her to use paper with her jutsu. Is also rumored to be very close to the Amikage. Naruto nodded hearing this. Sasuke, smirking, said, I want to know about Otsutsuki Naruto. Kabuto, smiling, pulled out a card and pushed some chakra into it. He, looking at the card, gained wide eyes, blanched, and felt his hands start to tremble. He, looking up at Naruto with wide eyes full of fear, said, Otsutsuki Naruto, aka the god of Carnage, is listed in the bingo book as an B-rank threat, said to have many different powerful bloodlines. His sword is rumored to have the very soul of the deadly Kyuubi inside of it. Has very powerful summons that have been seen taking down entire boats. This says he also died during your C-S rank mission. It is unknown how he came back to life, but it is said that he burst from the ocean shrouded in a flaming cloak looking much like the mythical phoenix. Naruto, petting Mira, ignored all of the eyes on him. Well, he did until he felt the intense stare of Conan. Winking at her, he smirked when the cold-looking woman blushed. Sasuke, with wide eyes, was about to protest all of this, when a large poof of smoke occurred. When it cleared, standing there reading an orange book was Zabuza Momochi, a sword resting on his back. He lazily said, All right, brats, to your seats, it's time for the written part of the Chunin exams. Everybody quickly took a seat, and Naruto wondered if Kami was upset at him or something as he was sitting in the middle seat. Samui sitting to the left of him and Conan on the right. Mira was laying down at the front of the class, but still was searching for any threats to her master. Zabuza then explained the rules and began the exam. Naruto, flipping over the exam, looked at the paper, and didn't know a single answer. He, knowing that this test was about information gathering, tapped into Mewtwo's powers, and got the answers from Shikamaru, not even wanting to go near Sakura's mind. Once finishing his paper, he flipped it over and decided to read some minds. He decided to start close, breached Conan's mind. She was thinking, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is a B-rank threat in the bingo book, has some unknown bloodlines, and his summon looks rather deadly. I wonder how Nagato will react to this. He'll most likely send out Kisame and Hitachi to capture or test the Jinchuriki. How he doesn't see that Hitachi is clearly protecting the boy from inside of the Akatsuki, I don't know. Can't say I blame her, though he is rather cute. Naruto, storing all of the information he had just gotten, turned to Samui. She was thinking, so he is the one Raikage-sama wants me to seduce. Maybe he won't be difficult and I can just get this over with. It won't be all that bad either, he's really handsome, and seems to be rather strong. I and the others will track and defeat his team during the second exam. Naruto again stored this info for later. He, entering Karen's mind, sweat dropped as she was thinking about how dark his chakra was and how she just wanted to jump his bones and ride his dragon. Moving away from her, he tried Tamari. She was thinking, I can't believe the god of Carnage asked about my love life. Does this mean he's interested? Why would he possibly be attracted to me though? I'm not all that beautiful, and according to Kankuro and Lady Chiyo, I'm too brash to ever make a proper girlfriend. Naruto shook his head at her thoughts, wondering if he should kick Kankuro's ass first or demolish whoever this Chiyo lady was. He, deciding to enter one more mind, tried Zabuza. Zabuza was thinking, Haku has her eyes set on Naruto. The way he attracts women, though, it looks like she'll be in for one hell of a battle for his heart. Hell, I kinda feel bad for the kid with all of the powerful kunoichi after his heart. Naruto, sweat dropping at this, decided to polish Jinx's blade as he really didn't want to hear anyone else's thoughts. Pulling her out from behind him, he pulled out the cloth and sword polish. He then started to gently wax the blade, ignoring the very loud and sensual purrs from Jinx. 45 minutes later, and Zabuza said, Time's up, brats, pencils down. Everyone, stopping their test, blinked when Zabuza said, Alright, the 10th question is optional. If you take it and fail, you'll never be allowed to advance in rank. Chose wisely, brats. Naruto ignored the many different reactions, but his eyes moved to Sakura, who was looking at him with sad eyes, slowly raising her hands. Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, Oi, no brows. Stop making the weaklings piss their pants. You and I both know that you have no authority to do anything besides fail us from this exam. Now get on with the 10th question before I let Mira burn your oh so precious porn. Zabuza hearing this gulped and said, alright all of you who chose to stay past. The test was about information gathering, and that's the reason why you were given so many points to cheat. A quality of a chunin is being able to make tough choices. Now call off the Doomhound brat. Mira, who had been staring at Zabuza's book and building up fire in her stomach, stopped when Naruto said, Mira-chan, enough, he gets the message. Mira, stopping her build-up, barked a few times and trotted over to Naruto. Naruto, then feeling a very familiar chakra presence approaching fast, sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose and said, I don't know what I did to upset you, Kamine, as I haven't even met you, but I'm very sorry and I promise to never do it again. Zabuza, also sensing the chakra presence, said, this probably isn't going to end well. Just then a black ball burst through the window. A banner appeared as the ball uncoiled to reveal Anko making a victory pose and wearing one of Naruto's shirts. Naruto, face palming, said, this is why people tend to think that you're insane, Anko. Anko, hearing Naruto's voice, blinked and looked around. She, turning to Zabuza, said, I knew letting you proctor this exam was a bad idea. You passed 87 genin, that's 29 teams of genin. Zabuza, with a twitching eyebrow, said, it's not my fault, blame your darling little brother. Anko, turning to Naruto, who shrugged and said, the Banshee was falling for no brows bullshit, so I had to stop it. Anko, nodding, smiled and said, no matter, the next test will cut your numbers down in half. Follow me to the forest of death. She then jumped out a different window. Naruto, sighing, said, troublesome older sisters. Come on, Mira. He then jumped out the first window Anko broke, followed by Mira. The other genin quickly followed the two of them, leaving behind a sweat-dropping Zabuza. Naruto, arriving at the gates to the forest of death, rolled his eyes, spotting Anko consuming skewer after skewer of dango. He, shaking his head, sat down beside Mira and started to pet her. Mira, feeling Naruto pet her, started to pant in happiness and wag her tail. An hour later the rest of the genin arrived. Anko, spotting them, smiled and quickly explained the exam they were about to take. Sasuke, being his usual arrogant self, said something, but quickly shut his big mouth, when Anko sliced his right cheek with a kunai of hers. She, of course being Anko, licked the blood out of said cut. She then made the most disgusted face and said, your blood is not tasty. It's downright vomit-inducing. I've had better tomato sandwiches. Sasuke scowled hearing this, while Sakura was seeing red at some bimbo assaulting her Sasuke-kun like that. Naruto himself was impassive on the outside, but on the inside he was roaring in laughter. Mira was not so dignified. She started to make a sound that resembled laughter. Team 7 then collected their scrolls, and headed to their assigned gate. Naruto had already sealed the scroll in his right hand, while creating a duplicate that he handed to Sasuke. He didn't trust the arrogant boy with something so important. He had also managed to swipe another 2 scrolls. One being the same they already had, the other being the one they needed. These 2 scrolls he made Mira swallow, knowing that they were safe inside of her. He then waited for the signal to go. Once he got it, he blasted into the forest, Mira and the other 2 right behind him. He, in the very front, crossed his hands and whispered, Shadow Clone Jutsu. 10 clones appeared without a single noise. The clones then transformed into identical copies of Team 7, including Mira. The clones then took off into the forest. Naruto then said, alright King Emo, Banshee, here's the plan. We head towards the tower, taking out any threats we may come across. I will lead as I know this forest like the back of my hand. Sakura, you will be behind me as you are the weakest, but have a sharp mind, almost comparable to Shikamaru's. Emo, you will be behind her, as even though you don't have them you have trained your eyes very hard so that you could capture movement when you finally awaken your Sharingan. Mira will be at the back, as she is the second most powerful of the 4 of us. She will be using her nose to search out any threats coming from behind. We will also have a code that we recite to each other if we ever get separated. The code is, you told me think about it, well I did. Now I don't want to feel a thing anymore. I'm tired of begging for the things that I want. I'm oversleeping like a dog on the floor. Imagine living like a king someday. A single night without a ghost in the walls. And if the beast shakes the earth underground we'll start the revolutions. He, turning his head slightly, asked, got it? Sakura, spotting his dojutsu activated, nodded, while Sasuke with a scowl on his face also nodded. Naruto, turning back to the front, said, "Good." 2 days later and Team 7 had yet to run into any trouble, and that's what worried Naruto. His eyes then sensing something let him know to get down. A huge gust of wind then blew over his head, and he cursed hearing both of his teammates be blown away. He standing up scowled, spotting Mira, growling, and Sakura and Sasuke nowhere to be seen. His eyes then moving to the trees, scowled again, spotting Samui and her 2 teammates, looking a little irritated. Naruto, pulling out Jinx, scowled and said, "Trust me, you don't want to do this." Karui, with rage in her eyes, said, "Shut up. Your stupid clones distracted us for 2 days, keeping us in this stupid forest and keeping Samui from doing her mission. Now be a good little dog and let Samui do her mission." Naruto narrowed his eyes hearing this. He, hearing Mira growling loudly, said, "Mira-chan, tear her apart." Mira, hearing this, let out a bone-chilling howl that could be heard in Konoha. She then vanished and Team Samui had to jump to avoid being fried by a ball of black flames. Mira, appearing on the branch they were just on, could be seen with fire inside of her mouth. Black flames visible at the corner of her mouth. Karui, pulling out her sword, asked, "What in Kami's name is this thing?" Samui, also pulling out her sword, said, "It's one of his summons, be careful." Omoi, with his lollipop in his mouth, said, "We need to take it down now." Mira, tired of them talking, let loose a powerful stream of black flames aimed at Karui. Said girl, jumping, felt her feet warm from the intensity of the flames. She, landing beside Samui, rushed towards Mira, and just managed to make the dog jump back. Omoi also attacked in that instant, causing Mira to roll over on her back. Naruto, not paying attention to the battle, had his eyes to the left, as that's where he senses Sakura and Sasuke fighting someone with as much chakra as him. Scowling, he said, "Mira." The dog, appearing beside him, was looking at him with her blood-red eyes. He, looking at her, said, "I have a new mission for you. My idiot teammates are fighting someone with chakra reserves as high as mine with me, wearing chakra suppression seals. I'm going to summon your pack. All of you are to go help my teammates, but don't get injured. In fact, I want all of you to mega evolve." Mira, barking, hopped back, as Naruto quickly summoned 50 more of the dogs, causing Team Samui to gain wide eyes. Mira, howling again, went through a small transformation, now having a silver bone like spikes on the front of her body. Mira then took off, her pack closely following behind her. Naruto, once they were gone, turned to Team Samui. He, setting into his Kenjutsu stance, said, "Come and bear witness to the god of Carnage." Karui, hearing this, charged in head-on, ignoring the cries of her teammates. Naruto, dodging Karui's attack, kicked her hard in the stomach, forcing the girl to bend over and clutch her stomach. He then backhanded the girl, not even caring about the shattering sound he heard. Karui, hitting a tree hard, slumped to the ground. Omoi, hearing this, charged Naruto with Samui. 30 minutes later and Naruto was sent crashing through a few trees, as all 3 members of Team Samui were now up and working together to take him down. Karui, panting, said, "That should take care of him." Omoi, also panting, said, "He's tougher than B-sensei." Samui, staring at the trees, said, "I can see why Raikage-sama wants his genes." Karui, standing up, said, "I guess we should go rescue the bastard so Samui can complete her mission." Omoi, nodding, said, "Then we can finish the job." Samui, sighing, said, "Come, let's finish this mission." What none of them knew was that buried under 7 trees Naruto was shaking with barely contained rage. Why was he so angry? Well, he was angry because some memories of his clone had just come back. This team from Kumo had defeated his clones, killing the Sasuke, Sakura and Mira hanged clones, then tried to rape the Naruto clone. If there was one thing that Naruto absolutely hated, it was rape. He then, hearing Jinx roaring to show these fools, and all of the others just who he was, could only nod. Lifting his hands up, he crossed them and said, "Kai." When he said this, a seal on his left arm appeared, and quickly vanished. With the removal of this seal, all of his chakra was unsealed, along with his form. He then, pulling out a tube full of bubbling red goop, uncorked it and poured the content down his throat. His eyes then dilated, and his heart started to beat really fast and really loud. His chakra then exploded from his form, burning the trees on him and the ground under him. Team Samui had wide eyes spotting the dark red and black pillar of energy shooting into the sky. Their eyes widened when the literal earth started to shake. They then fell to their knees as a killing intent so strong it was destroying the wildlife appeared and crushed all within its reach. Samui, looking towards the pillar, felt her eyes widen, spotting a human figure standing in the pillar. At least she thought it was human, until huge horns appeared from its skull, along with a pair of dreadful-looking wings. She then watched as a thick tail appeared behind it, swaying with pure menace. She felt her bowels empty, when what looked like tentacles appeared from all over the figure's body. In the figure's right hand an absolutely terrifying scythe could be seen. The figure then started to float off of the ground. The pillar of energy then started reducing until it was just as large as the figure. Team Samui finally got a view of the figure and all three of them felt their blood run cold. Floating above the black ground was a majorly changed Naruto. His platinum blonde hair was now down to the middle of his back. His dujutsu was activated and all 6 tomo were spinning very fast. From his top lip 2 sharp glistening fangs could be seen. From the middle of his forehead 2 thick silver horns could be seen, glistening in the light. His ears were pointed and seemed darker. Around each eye and his mouth strange blood-colored goop could be seen. His entire outfit was now made entirely of the thick red goop. A large capital C could be seen on the middle of the outfit. His right arm was now covered in the goop, but was now bulging with muscles. The hand was longer, and thick black claws could be seen on each finger. Said fingers were wrapped around a massive black scythe looking to be made of the spine of some unfortunate soul. From his back 2 massive dreadful black leather wings could be seen, the thick red goo on them also. His feet were now arched and thick black claws could be seen on each of them also. Swaying behind him was what looked like a tail fused with a zanbato. The zanbato part even had thick red goo spikes. Samui gulped again as those rage-filled eyes were set dead on her and her team. Naruto then said, "Foolish ninja. You have just pissed off the god of carnage, technology and destruction. Pray to Kami Ne that you survived this encounter because I will not be holding back as your mission was to rape me." Quote. He then, unfurling his wings, let out a bone-chilling, fear-inducing, prayer-inducing, "Run all the way to mama. Run as far away as you can roar." Karui, hearing said roar, could only think, Kami Ne? Is he really the god of carnage? If he is, then Raikage-sama is going to need protection from his wrath. Omoi was thinking, goodbye cruel world. To think Raikage-sama would send us to our deaths against an actual god. He's gonna crush my lollipop and my bones. Samui was thinking, this isn't going to end well unless I find a way to defeat an actual god. Oh, who am I kidding? I-sama, thanks to your idiotic ideals I'm going to be slaughtered by the true god of carnage, and die a virgin. Naruto, ending his roar, said, get ready to meet Tsubasa Ne. He then pounced on the poor Team Samui. Samui, ducking under a swipe from Naruto's tail an hour later, was really tired. Omoi and Karui were out of commission. Karui was bleeding from her midsection as Naruto had sliced her with his scythe. Omoi's right arm was mangled beyond recognition, because Naruto had crushed it in pure rage. Samui herself was sporting some rather nasty cuts, that were oozing blood. The three of them had tried to defeat this new monstrous Naruto but had been completely dominated. What made Samui shake though, was that Naruto wasn't even trying. He was doing the bare minimal. She jumping just managed to keep herself from being burned alive by pure white flames. She dashing forward tried to slice Naruto, but he caught her sword with his hand. He then turning his head to her locked eyes with her, and Samui started to try and get loose. Too bad for her, Naruto wasn't having none of that. He reaching forward with his left hand, forced her to be still. Looking into her eyes, he activated his psychic powers. Breaking into her mind, he started to literally destroy her mind. He was shattering all her beliefs, all her truths, all of it. Samui's eyes were slowly glazing over. He then, sensing someone else attacking his team, growled and tossed the girl away. Roaring, he took off into the sky, leaving behind 3 very hurt Kumo genin. Samui, once he was gone, struggled to her feet, and stumbled over to Karui. Pulling out the medical kit, she wrapped Karui's midsection and stopped the bleeding. She doing the same for Omoi's arm, created 2 lightning clones and picked her 2 teammates up. She then ran towards the tower. knowing that her team needed healing and she needed to sit down and build her walls back up. She didn't know it, but Naruto had watched her leave with a smirk on his face. He then vanished in a poof of smoke, revealing himself to be a shadow clone. The real Naruto arriving at his team's location scowled, spotting Konan now attacking his team. He, dropping down from the sky, appeared in front of Mira and her pack. Said pack was struggling to stand from the many wounds Konan had inflicted on them. Naruto, turning to Mira and ignoring the curious Konan, said, "Mira-chan, you and your pack relax and bask in my aura. I will handle the so-called Angel of Aim." Naruto then turned to Konan, who with narrowed eyes said, "Kyuubi Jinchuriki, you will surrender peacefully so that we can extract the Kyuubi from you and true everlasting peace can be achieved." Naruto, snorting, said, "Or you can scurry back to your fake god before I crush your body, grind your bones to pieces and see what's left to aim in a doggy bag. Your choice." Konan, scowling, launched a few paper shuriken at him. Her eyes widened when said shuriken were burned to a crisp before even reaching him. Naruto, shaking his head, said, "Wrong choice." He then vanished and Konan doubled over in pain. She was then sent flying back from a pure kick to her solar plexus. She, crashing through a few trees, got to her feet, just in time for a fist to collide with her face, making her jaw rattle. She was then kneed in the gut, and backhanded through even more trees. She then screamed as her arm was broken in 6 different places. She then gasped, feeling Naruto's hand wrap around the back of her head. Her face was then slammed hard into the forest floor, causing a massive shockwave to run through the forest. Naruto then, picking her back up, tossed her through even more trees. Konan, struggling to her feet, could feel that a lot of her bones were broken and possibly a few of her internal organs were bruised. She, with blurry vision, looked up and whimpered, spotting Naruto slowly marching toward her. She, forming a paper spear, tossed it at him, but groaned when he knocked it away with his hand. He then vanished again, and Konan gasped when his face appeared an inch away from hers. His eyes locked on hers. He, once again activating his psychic powers, started to warp Konan's mind. He then, backing away, said, "Retreat to aim. Recover and tell your fake god that he has drawn the ire of the god of Carnage. I am going to rip his head off, place it on a spike outside of my mansion and use it as a scarecrow to terrify any birds annoying me." Konan, with wide fearful eyes, took off in pure fear, going to tell Nagato just what he had foolishly done, and alert Hitachi of Naruto's change. Naruto, walking back to his little group, walked over to the duck butt, pushing Sakura out of the way. Spotting the curse mark on Sasuke's neck, he rolled his eyes and said, "Of course Orochimaru would mark the emo with his Hiki of Doom. It doesn't matter, as long as he doesn't test me, we're fine." He then, picking up the emo, turned to Sakura and said, "Come Sakura, we will end this exam now as we have both scrolls." Sakura, nodding, followed Naruto, who was petting Mira, telling her how much of a good girl she was. An hour later, Naruto was walking slowly towards the tower, letting Sakura regain her strength and Mira explore her surroundings a little. Mira, sniffing a tree, took a piss on it, marking her territory. Naruto looked like he was just walking, but really he was constantly expanding his senses, making sure they were safe. His nose picking up the scent of Kabuto, walked around the boy and finally reached the tower. Opening the door, he tossed Sasuke to the ground. He, ignoring the screeching of Sakura, pulled out the scrolls and opened them. 5 seconds later, and a lot of smoke, Iruka appeared. Said man, spotting Sasuke, quickly asked what happened. Naruto, turning to Sakura, who without wasting a breath explained what had happened. Naruto then explained why he wasn't there to help his team out. When he was done, Iruka scowled and said, "Kumo never learns, does it?" Naruto, snorting, said, "Nope. Now can we please be escorted to a room? I need to sleep and Mira needs her treat." Iruka, nodding, lead Team 7 to a room not too far from the main room. Once inside of the room, Naruto plopped down on the first bed offered to them. Mira hopping onto the bed with him curled up next to him. Sakura blinked when both were soon sleeping. She, shaking her head, climbed into the next bed, ready to sleep herself, but wondering what was gonna happen to Sasuke. Both were soon asleep. At that moment, a bright light appeared in the room. A beautiful woman appeared, looking much like Tsubasa, except she had long flowing red hair. This woman is Kami. She, walking over to Naruto's bed, gently sat down on the bed. Smiling, she kissed the sleeping Naruto on his forehead and said, "Good night, dear sweet little brother." Soon you will face many challenges, including a battle with a member of your former family and a pale snake. Naruto, as if somehow hearing her, rolled over in his sleep and mumbled out, "Somebody's gonna die." Kami, giggling, placed a golden necklace around Naruto's neck before vanishing in a flash of golden light. Naruto, waking up 3 hours later, grumbled about not getting enough sleep. He, silently getting out of the bed, decided maybe it's time he decided on his sacred animal. He, closing his eyes, knew that whatever it was needed to incorporate all 3 of his districts. He then blinked, feeling Mira nuzzle his arm. Turning to her, he asked, "Do you have any idea for my sacred animal?" Mira, wagging her tail, barked and licked his hand. He, blinking, said, "You think we should go to the lab first?" Mira barked again. Naruto, standing up, walked over to the nearest wall. Placing his right hand on the wall, he said, "Invoke thy name Mitarashi, Otsutsuki, and Jinx." Mira barked happily as the wall slid open silently to reveal a narrow staircase that lead only God knows where. Naruto, entering the tunnel, followed it to his secret lab. He, closing up the wall after Mira had come inside, said, "I invoke thy name Otsutsuki Naruto, god of technology." Like a switch was flipped, all of the lights turned on, revealing a lab like nothing anyone had ever seen. Brand new shiny metal could be seen covering a lot of the tables. Buzz saws, lasers, swords, scrubs, all of it could be seen. There was even a tank that looked big enough to fit a person inside of it. Naruto, ignoring all of this, walked over to his computer and sat down in the chair, feeling Mira sit down beside him in the other chair. Turning it on, he started to scroll through the many different animals, listening to hear if Mira found what she was looking for. Mira, spotting what she had in mind, started to bark really loudly. Naruto, looking at the screen, blinked, reading, Tyrantrum, the despot Pokemon. Abilities are Strong Jaw, and the hidden one is Rockhead. Is part of the dragon group but is mainly classified as a rock because it coming from a fossil and looking like a T-Rex. Thanks to its gargantuan jaws, which could shred thick metal plates as if they were paper, it was invincible in the ancient Pokemon world it once inhabited. It also behaved like a king. It's 8 feet and 2 inches tall, and weighs 595.2 pounds. He, looking at this Pokemon, said, "Good sweet Kami, nay, this Pokemon looks like it could eat half of Konoha and still be hungry." He then started to laugh as he said, "It's perfect." He then, stopping his insane laughter, got down on his knees and said, "Kamiheim, please send me a terrible, ill, or dying Tyrantrum, as I do not wish to transform a healthy one into my sacred animal." He smiled when he heard a loud poof of smoke. Getting off of his knees, he felt his eyes soften, spotting the poor Tyrantrum that looked to be on its last leg. He, using his telekinesis powers, floated the poor animal into the tank. He then, filling it with a dark green liquid, said, "That should put the poor girl to sleep." He then, walking into a closet, changed out of his normal clothes. He, reappearing, was now dressed in a white lab coat, a white button-up shirt, white gloves, a pocket protector on the front of said shirt. He had on black pants with flat black shoes. On his face, framing his eyes, was a pair of black glasses. His hair was even slicked back with a single bang falling over his face. He, walking over to a door with a very heavy lock on it, pulled out his key and opened the door. It, opening, revealed millions of projects from human and animal fusions, to tube of black liquid that was held in a diamond shell. He, walking over to the tube containing more of the red goop, along with a metallic exoskeleton. He, floating them into the room, grabbed a pair of glowing robotic red eyes. He then, grabbing a flamethrower and a tube of nanobots, walked back into his lab, shutting the door behind him. He, walking over to the tank, opened up many of the slots on the tank. Opening the tube of red gunk and the nanobots, he poured them into 2 of the slots. Finding the largest slot, he put the exoskeleton in this one. He then put the eyes and flamethrower in another slot. Shutting the slots, he walked over to the computer connected to the tank. He was about to turn it on when Mira whines. Turning to her, he blinked, spotting her carrying a large purple stone known as vibranium. He, taking the stone, asked, "You want me to add some vibranium to the mix?" Mira, barking, wagged her tail yes. He, shrugging his shoulder, walked over to the slots again and opened one of them. Putting the vibranium inside of it, he closed it and sat down in his seat in front of the computer. He, pressing a few buttons, was skimming through all of the readings and either canceling programs or activating them. He then, typing in a few things, said, "That's the last program. Now let's see how long this takes." He pressing enter blinked when the screen said, "Integration and hardwiring will take 3 hours. The rest will take a day. Process should be done within 27 hours. Naruto sighed hearing this and said, "Oh well. Guess I'll go back to the room now and go back to sleep." He changing back into his clothes tossed Mira a hambone and said, "Come on Mira-chan, we have a nap waiting for us." Mira trotting behind Naruto was wagging her tail, happy to have her treat from her master. The next day Naruto was walking with his team, behind Iruka towards the hall where the other genin were waiting. Entering it he wasn't surprised to find all of the teams had managed to survive the exam. This meant that he was gonna have to battle in a preliminary. He ignoring Sarutobi give a speech about what the true purpose was about, was letting his eyes roam over Temari's body. He was mainly shamelessly staring at her ass. Temari somehow feeling this felt her cheeks heat up as she turned in a different direction. Naruto's eyes then landing on Kankuro, looked the puppet boy dead in the eyes and made a throat-slashing motion. He then blinked when Kabuto, Karui, and Omoi all surrendered, one claiming that he was out of chakra, the other two having legitimate injuries. He then hearing Sakura and Duck King argue, turned to the two of them and hissed, "Sakura, if the emo wants to battle, then let him battle." Sakura hearing this was about to protest again when both Naruto and Sasuke glared at her. She shrinking nodded. The teams were then taken up to the balcony. Naruto being bored decided to listen to some music. Putting his headphones in, he started jamming to the blaring music in his iPod. He then stopped when he spotted a flash of green. Looking up he sighed spotting Gaara and Lee battling. He then said, "Gaara, you are not allowed to kill or cripple Lee. You are to win without taking away his shinobi career." "Understood." Gaara blocking one of Lee's kicks said, "Understood Naruto-sama." Naruto understanding that Gaara was on board, tapped into his demonic chakra and said, "Shukaku, you are not to get involved in this match, because if you do I will remove you from Gaara and seal you in a woman's adult toy, while restricting your powers." Gaara gulping said, "Mother says she understands and will not fail you." Naruto nodding put his headphones back in. About 30 minutes later and Ino nudged him. He blinking looked up at the screen. He scowled spotting that he was up against Link Namikaze. He removing his headphones he handed them to Ino and walked down to the floor. He glaring at his former elder brother took in his features. Link was tall, at 6 feet flat. He had long blonde hair, that was covered up by a black cap. Link's eyes were dark blue, and cold. He wasn't overly muscular but had muscle tone. He was dressed in a black shirt, that was halfway buttoned up, revealing his bare upper torso. He had on dark gray pants that were folded up at the bottom, not to cover his thick black leather boots. Sitting on his back was a short sword. Hayate standing between the two boys knew that this wasn't going to end well for Link. He then asked, "Are both fighters ready?" Naruto unsheathing Jinx said, "I am." Link bringing his own blade in front of him said, "Ready." Hayate then cried out, "Begin." As soon as the words left his mouth, Naruto shot forward his feet not even touching the ground. Link barely brining his sword up in time grunted as the blow was heavy. Link then trying to counter blinked when he hit nothing but air. Naruto appearing in the air, was twirling Jinx like a kunai. He looking at Link with murderous eyes slammed back down on Link's blade again, causing the ground to crack under the force of said blow. Link trying to counter again, barely dodged a fist to his stomach. He getting up rushed towards Naruto, planning on taking it to Naruto. Imagine his surprise when he couldn't land a single blow on Naruto. Naruto vanishing appeared on the statue. He with a smile on his face said, "You're gonna die today, fool. Jinx is roaring to taste your blood and rip into your flesh." He then revealing his very sharp teeth said, "I'm obliged to give it to her." He lifting Jinx up said, "Death, the never-ending fate. The little black string that ties all living beings together. Anger, the uncaged animal's wrath. The base to every murder. Revenge, the ambition of those seeking to kill all that betrayed them. The most petty feeling. Kill, what most mortals do at least once. To act upon the most primal instinct. Nothingness, the feeling of not existing. The abyss inside of the human soul. Enigma, the unknown. What lurks in the dark, or what lies beneath. Sacred, the most precious thing. What you hold dear to your heart. Sacrifice, to willingly give your life for a cause. The willingness to die for what you believe in. I invoke thy name, Release your might upon the mortal world. Fear her jinx. Everyone gasped when a monstrous screech could be heard and all of the lights went off. When they came back on, everyone paled, spotting Naruto in a suit of armor belonged to a bipedal fox, with 9 bony flowing tails. In his right hand was the massive scythe from the forest, but the difference was that the blade was shrouded in a thick mist of darkness. Naruto, lifting the scythe up, said, "Oh yeah, today you die, and neither your precious father or mother will be able to save you. Ha. He finished his statement with the most spine-tingling laugh. He then launched forward and Link barely blocked with his own sword, but let out a scream of pain, when 3 long slashes appeared on his back. Naruto, seeing this, started to attack relentlessly. Link, blocking each time, was gaining more and more wounds, some even cutting very deeply. He could also feel his sword starting to wear down. Link, jumping back, pulled out a very familiar kunai to many of the ones watching. He, snorting, said, "I'm gonna defeat you and make you return to the family." Naruto, hearing this and spotting the kunai, decided to tap into Giratina's powers. He, feeling space distorting around him, said, "That's a nice dream, too bad I'm gonna turn you into sushi before you even get the chance." Naruto then literally vanished, just as Link threw his kunai, shocking everyone. The scythe, appearing directly behind Link, slashed him on his back. Link, screaming in pure pain, dropped to one knee and tried to get up, only to be kicked square in the jaw by a floating foot. This continued to happen for quite some time. Anko, watching on the side, turned to Kakashi and said, "That's what I was talking about. I can't even sense his chakra signature." Kakashi, with his Sharingan out, said, "I can't trace his movements or even see him. It's almost like he's not even in this plane of existence anymore." Kurenai, getting closer, asked, "Is this the power of the rebellious princess?" Kakashi, nodding his head, said, "It could only be her power." Samui, off to the side watching this, could only think, "Ai-sama, you have drawn the ire of a god. He's moving so fast, not even the infamous flying thunder god jutsu can keep up with him." Tamari, seeing this, was thinking, "Oh dear sweet Kami, there's no way in hell I'm participating in the invasion with him helping Konoha." Sarutobi was thinking, "Naruto is actually trying to kill Link. The worst part is that if I try to stop this battle, Naruto will most likely go on a killing spree that would make Kyuubi's attack look tame." Minato was thinking, "He's trying to kill Link. Why would he do that? They're siblings and should be getting along." Kushina was thinking, "This isn't good. Link is going to be killed all because I decided to follow Minato Baka like a stupid fangirl." Orochimaru was trying not to lick his lips as he thought, "I think I just found another target for my little seal." Naruto, then appearing in front of Link, stabbed both of his hands into the boy's stomach. Everyone gained wide eyes when Link vanished in a poof of smoke to reveal Link coming down from the ceiling with orange eyes, with large black bars going horizontal for pupils. A slight red tint could be seen around his eyes. This caused everyone to gasp as Link was in the fabled Sage mode. He, stabbing Naruto's shoulder, gained wide eyes when Naruto vanished in a pool of black liquid. He, sensing something coming down from above, rolled to the right, just in time to avoid being crushed by a giant foot. He, looking up, gasped, spotting a beast unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. It looked like a T-Rex, but with metallic enhancements, along with a thick red goop covering most of its body. Naruto, standing on the beast's nose, smiled and said, "Just in time, my oh so precious Grimlock. Now then, show this fool just who he is messing with." Grimlock, roaring, started to attack Link, who was hard-pressed to dodge the monster's attacks. Things got worse when Naruto started to use Giratina's distortion powers again. Link, rolling out of the way of a slice by Naruto, could feel something about to happen. He, replacing himself with a little orange book, sighed as Grimlock snapped his jaws down on the book. Naruto, appearing again, laughed and said, "Grimlock, show the fool your flames." Grimlock, snorting, roared and blew out white-hot flames that Link barely jumped over. Sadly, this is what Naruto wanted as he punched the boy down hard. Link, landing on the floor, wasn't prepared to be lifted up by his ankles. He was then dragged towards Naruto, who had a fist drawn back. Connecting the punch, a loud crunch could be heard. Link, hitting the wall, knew that his jaw was broken. He then, standing to his feet, went through a few hand signs and called out, summoning jutsu. In a poof of smoke, a toad appeared, being roughly the size of Grimlock. Link, on top of the toad, said, "Gamatatsu." Take the beast. The toad nodding jumped at Grimlock, who roared loudly at the challenge. Naruto, vanishing back into the distorted world, picked awakened Jinx up and said, "Back to the fun I go." Everyone else was wondering how was it that the two giant beasts were even fitting inside of the tower. Anko, having a hunch, said, "It's because he's distorting time and space with his powers that the two massive beasts are even here. If he wasn't using his powers, we'd be pancakes by now." Kakashi, who was fuming at the loss of his book, said, "That damn bastard has to die for daring to switch places with my precious Icha." Everyone's sweat dropped hearing this. Kurenai, coughing into her hand, said, "I think you're right, Anko." Anko, smiling, said, "Good, because if no one had have answered me I would have told some very personal secrets." Kurenai, hearing this, blinked and asked, "What secrets?" Anko, motioning her to come closer, whispered something into Kurenai's ears. Kurenai was soon blushing bright red, and asked, "How did you find that out?" Anko, smirking, said, "Naruto's my little brother. I be damned if I haven't learned anything from him." Kurenai, turning back to the battle, promised to make Anko promise to never tell anyone that secret, as it would ruin her, but most importantly ruin her chances with Naruto. Naruto and Link locked in a heated battle of wills, one to kill, the other to defeat. Naruto then smirked for some reason. Opening his mouth, Link gained wide eyes as he could feel something building up in Naruto's mouth. He, jumping back, gasped when a solid orange beam came out of Naruto's mouth and destroyed a good portion of the wall. Naruto, closing his mouth, swung with Jinx, making everyone wonder why, until they spotted the thick black lines speeding towards Link. Said teen, jumping over the lines, rushed towards Naruto. Naruto, blocking Link's sword with the spine of Jinx, lifted his left hand and said, "Experience my new technique." Gran Ray Sero. Link gasped when a large ball of pulsing malice-filled energy appeared in front of Naruto's hand. He, moving, gasped when the ball turned into a beam that scorched the earth and went through the walls of the tower. You could see a clear path from the tower to the village. He was then forced to double over in pain, as Naruto finally connected a punch. Naruto then, grabbing Link's head, tossed him into the nearest wall. Naruto then, appearing in front of Link, started to literally rain punches and kicks down on Link. He, stopping the assault, grabbed Link by the throat and tossed him to the middle of the room. Naruto then, appearing standing over the struggling Link, moved his hand. Link's shirt was then torn to shreds, thick oozing wounds appearing on his body. Naruto, smiling, sliced Link's left arm off, causing the boy to cry out in agony. He then cut off Link's right hand. Naruto, laughing as the blood sprayed everywhere, said, "Yes, scream for me, foolish ninja. Bleed as I slowly finish you off." He then slowly started to chop off more of Link's body. Pretty soon Link was covered in his own blood, missing both arms, and most of his upper torso having lethal wounds on it. Naruto himself was coated in Link's blood, yet didn't seem the least bit upset. Naruto, grabbing Link's sword, stabbed it into the right eye of Link. He, pulling the blade out, quickly smiled, spotting the gaping socket of Link. Naruto, slicing the eye into pieces, then sliced off one of Link's ears. Naruto burned this with white flames from his mouth. Naruto then, shaking his head, said, "I'm bored now. Guess I'll end this." Naruto then grabbed Link's head, and to the shock and horror of many watching, ripped the head and spine out with a single pull. Blood sprayed everywhere, and the tired toad finally vanished in a poof of smoke. Naruto, turning to look at Grimlock, said, "Go, my pet. Inform Kami Ne and Tsubasa Ne what you are." Grimlock, roaring, vanished in a burst of golden light. Naruto, allowing Jinx to return to her normal form, turned to Hayate, who looked a little greener than usual. Hayate, swallowing his breakfast from this morning, said, "Winner Otsutsuki Naruto." Naruto, hearing this, walked back to his spot, not even caring when Hayate called for a cleanup crew. Naruto, arriving on the balcony, blinked, spotting the stars in Zabuza's eyes, along with the thumbs up from both Kakashi and Anko. Shrugging, he leaned up against the wall, and went back to listening to his music. He didn't even pay attention to the other matches as he was lost in his music. He then blinked, finding himself standing among the victors. He, looking down at the paper in his hand, read the number 3. He then smiled, hearing that he was paired against Kankuro in the first round. He, turning to the makeup-wearing boy, made a throat-slitting motion with his finger, making Kankuro pale. He was then informed along with the others that they had a month to train. He, not caring about this, waited until everyone was dismissed and went home to his apartment. Arriving there, he walked into his bedroom and blinked, spotting Tsubasa laying on his bed, napping. He, waking her up, blinked when she said, "Finally you're back from that stupid test." Naruto, sweat-dropping, asked, "Why are you here?" Tsubasa, smiling, said, "To train you, of course, silly." Amaterasu and Susanoo said they'd be helping also. Naruto, hearing this, asked, "Exactly what are you going to be training me in?" Tsubasa, gaining an evil smirk, said, "Everything, including your godly forms." Naruto, blanching at this, asked, "Where will I be training?" Tsubasa, smiling, said, "Training ground 23, you'll train every day except for Saturday and Sunday." Naruto nodded to this, but then blinked when he was pulled to his bed and being used as a plushie by Tsubasa, who said, "Good, now we sleep." Naruto, feeling his eyebrow twitch, could already tell that this was going to be troublesome. The next day Naruto was Saturday, so Naruto decided to chill. He was sitting in his comfy chair, wearing only a pair of black shorts, when he heard a knock on his door. Sighing, he got up and opened the door. He blinked, spotting Kurenai at the door. He, looking her over twice, asked, "How may I help you, Kurenai-sensei?" Kurenai, turning her head to the left to hide her blush, asked, "I was wondering if you'd like to go out on a date with me tonight?" Naruto, blinking, shrugged and said, "Sure. What time do you want me to pick you up?" Kurenai, smiling, said, 7 and dress formally." She then vanished in a swirl of leaves. He, closing the door, walked back into his living room. He was about to sit back down when Tsubasa walked back into the room, with a smile on her face. He, quirking an eyebrow, was about to ask her why she was smiling when she squealed, glomped him and said, "I can't believe my adorable little brother has a date with such a hot young girl." Naruto, blinking, turned into pure darkness and appeared in his kitchen. He, shaking his head, asked, "Young? Last time I checked, Kurenai-sensei was about 25, and in this world 25 is not too young." Tsubasa, giggling, said, "Of course you feel that way. You're only 13 and haven't been alive for centuries. To me she's young." Naruto, hearing this and drinking some grape juice, asked, "Just how old are you?" Tsubasa, giggling, said, 2,000,000 years old. Before you came along, Yami was the youngest of the gods. Now you're the young one, probably why Yami is celebrating being an elder sibling now." She then, grabbing Naruto's hand, dragged him to his bedroom closet. Opening the door, she said, "Now then, let's help you pick out something befitting your status as a god." Naruto was about to decline this when Kami, and 2 women he assumed were Susanoo and Amaterasu, appeared. Kami, smiling, said, "Don't try to argue, darling little brother. You need help with your fashion choices." Naruto, sweat dropping, could only think, this probably won't end well. At 7, Kurenai was nervously waiting for Naruto to knock on the door of her apartment. Sure enough, she heard a soft knock on her front door. She, taking a deep breath, opened the door and gasped. Standing at her front door, dressed in an elegant kimono, was Naruto. His long platinum blonde hair was tied up into a single top knot, a golden pin in the front. The kimono was black with red veins and destroyed buildings decorating it. On the collar of the kimono was an intricate design of a simple C. She didn't know if he had on anything underneath the kimono, but she thought he looked marvelous. He, smiling at her, said, "My sisters thought I should be dressed to match my status. Underneath this fancy kimono is my shorts and my kunai pouch." He then, showing her his hand, made her blink, spotting the blood-red nail polish, and the 3 intricate rings on his fingers. The first ring was golden, and shaped like a dragon's head. The eyes were these large emeralds. The second ring was like a gate, with a dark blue circle in the middle. The kanji for destruction glowing in the middle. The last of the rings was silver and shaped like a small bug. He, smiling, said, "They also decided to paint my fingernails the color of blood, supposedly complementing my aura." Quote. He then said, "Enough about me, though you look stunning. The red dress you're wearing complements your stunning eyes." Kurenai, blushing, took his hand, closed her door and locked it. She then followed Naruto out on the town. She, leading him to a very fancy eatery, walked up the host and said, "Table for Yuhi." The woman, smiling, said, "Ah, Mrs. Yuhi, please follow me to your table." Naruto, following Kurenai to their table, sat down, of course after she was seated. Ordering a steak, he smiled at her and asked, "So Kurenai-sensei, why did you ask me out on this date?" Kurenai, blushing, said, "Well, I just wanted to get to know you. The real you, not the bloodthirsty monster most people see." Naruto, hearing this, leaned on his hand and asked, "What do you want to know?" Kurenai asked. Everything, like your favorite color, where'd you learn to sing, your training, how you get your hair so tame. All of it. Naruto laughing said, that's a lot of information Kurenai-chan, but I'll oblige you. He then smiling said, my favorite color is orange, believe it or not. My favorite food is ramen, all kinds. I learned to sing from Jinx Nei as she would sing me to sleep when I was troubled during my younger years. She also trained me, along with the old man, Anko, Ibiki, Inochi and Hayate. My hair is actually very easy to take care of, as all I have to do wash it, then brush it once. My favorite type of music is alternative. He then started to tell her what she wanted to know, smiling at her captivated eyes. Their meals arrived and the both of them ate, with Naruto still telling her about himself. When they were finished, Naruto was surprised that they were now in a park walking down the paths, enjoying nature. Stopping at a tree, Kurenai said, this is the best date I've been on so far. Naruto laughing said, it's not over yet Kurenai-chan. Tonight you get the special treat of hearing me sing another song to you. This time it'll be a full performance. He stepping away from her, snapped his fingers and 4 shadow clones appeared. One clone was on the drums, one was holding an electric bass guitar, another was holding a regular acoustic guitar. The last clone quickly transformed into a female and sat down on the amp. Naruto walking towards the microphone closed his eyes and said, this one is for you Kurenai-chan. Kiss Me by Ed Sheeran. I don't own. Settle down with me. Cover me up. Cuddle me in. Lie down with me. And hold me in your arms. And your heart's against my chest, your lips pressed against my neck. I'm falling for your eyes, but they don't know me yet. And with a feeling I'll forget, I'm in love now. Kiss me like you wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. This feels like falling in love. Falling in love. We're falling in love. Settle down with me. And I'll be your safety. You'll be my lady. I was made to keep your body warm. But I'm cold as the wind blows, so hold me in your arms. Oh no. My heart's against your chest, your lips pressed to my neck. I'm falling for your eyes, but they don't know me yet. And with this feeling I'll forget, I'm in love now. Kiss me like you wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. This feels like falling in love. Falling in love. We're falling in love. Guitar solo. Yeah, I've been feeling everything. From hate to love. From love to lust. From lust to truth. I guess that's how I know you. So I hold you close to help you give it up. So kiss me like you wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. This feels like falling in love. Falling in love. We're falling in love. Kiss me like you wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. You wanna be loved. This feels like falling in love. Falling in love. We're falling in love. Naruto opening his eyes blinked, spotting all of the females around him sporting huge blushes, hearts in their eyes, or plain out drooling. He sweat dropping, focused on Kurenai, who had the brightest smile on her face. He smiling at this dismissed his clones, and walked over to her. He was surprised when she grabbed him and pulled him into a forceful, passionate, and hungry kiss. She ending the kiss smiled at him and said, let's go, this place is getting crowded. Naruto shrugging let her lead him out of the park. Arriving at her apartment door, about 2 hours later, she smiled at him and said, thank you for the wonderful date Naruto-kun. Naruto smiling said, no problem, it was fun and I enjoyed it. Kurenai smiling decided to give him more kiss. Naruto leaning into the kiss, felt his entire body warm up. Kurenai ending the kiss opened her door and went inside. Once she was inside, Naruto smiled and said, Nai-chan. He turning around turned to pure darkness and headed to his apartment. Arriving inside of it, he snapped his fingers and the kimono was gone, replaced with his pajamas. Walking into his bedroom, he sweat dropped, finding Tsubasa once again curled up in his bed. He shrugging climbed into the bed, and instantly regretted it as she latched onto him and started cuddling him, like he was a teddy bear. He blushed when she nuzzled his face and mumbled, you're so warm Naruto-kun. We're gonna sleep like this for now on. Okay. Naruto sweat dropping decided to just go to sleep and deal with this later. Monday morning we can find Naruto sitting in training ground 23, his hair looking like he was just waking up, and a little drool could even be seen on the side of his face. Honestly, he didn't look his best. Hell, he was still even in his pajamas. Tsubasa with a large smile on her face could be seen standing in front of him with a scary smirk on his face. She was also holding something behind her. To her left he could see his other sister Susanoo. She had long flowing dark gray hair, that was tied into a ponytail. She had on this black battle armor and in her left hand was a sword that looked like it was made in the very fires of hell. She had a large smirk on her face spotting her still very sleepy little brother. To the right of Tsubasa was Amaterasu. She had short spiky red hair, and tan skin. She was dressed in a black tank top, showing off her tattooed arms. She had on a pair of red jeans and thick black boots. She had the Mangekyo Sharingan blazing in each eye and had a devilish smile on her face. Naruto yawning asked, "Are we going to train or can I go back to sleep?" Tsubasa giggling revealed the object behind her to be a pair of shackles. Naruto had to quirk an eyebrow at this when Susanoo said, "These are to be wrapped around your wrist and ankles. Each shackle weighs around 250 pounds. You are to wear these for the entire month. If you take them off for any reason, you will be forced to run laps on the moon." Naruto hearing this paled. Amaterasu giggling said, "That's not all. Today you'll be training your reflexes so myself and Tsubasa will be throwing everything we have at you." Naruto hearing this actually turned white, as this wasn't going to end well. Tsubasa giggling said, "That's not all, Naru-chan. Susanoo is also going to be teaching you Kenjutsu and the surprise for you is that if you can make it 3 weeks without removing your weights, then Kami-chan will be teaching you how to enter Sage mode with the Pokemon, and the last week will be training with Kaguya-chan learning more powers of the Otsutsuki clan." Naruto hearing this sighed and asked, "I'm not going to be able to walk home, am I?" All three giggling said, "Nope, one of us will have to carry you home." He sighing again removed his shirt and said, "Alright then let's get this started." Tsubasa giggling attached the shackles to him and said, "We begin now, Naru-chan." 7 hours later and Naruto was being carried by Tsubasa, as his body was literally smoking. Tsubasa with a gentle smile on her face was about to nuzzle Naruto's face at how cute he looked right now, when a shadow appeared in front of her. She looking up scowled spotting Jiraiya of the Sannin. The man didn't look happy, in fact he looked downright upset. He stomping up to her said, "Wake that little monster up, so I can seal his powers away, and lock away his memories so he can be with Minato like the good brat he is." Tsubasa was about to say something when Naruto said, "Tsubasa-ne, put me down. I had to deal with this fool." Tsubasa sighing put him down and watched as Naruto struggled to his feet. He once on his feet scowled at Jiraiya and said, "Begone foolish toad, before I turn you into swamp stew." Jiraiya scowling said, "You stupid boy, you killed Link, he was my greatest student yet." Naruto laughing said, "No, you foolish ninja, Nagato was and still is your greatest student yet, with Konan coming in a close second." Jiraiya scowling said, "They are dead, you fool." Naruto snorting said, "Yeah, and Orochimaru is not a pedophile, Tsunade's not busty, and Hyuga Hinata isn't my stalker." Jiraiya scowling at this said, "That's it, you and me now, Brad. Training Ground 10. Naruto shrugging followed the Toad Sage to Training Ground 10. Once there he noticed that the Namikaze family along with the Genin teams were there. Jiraiya smirking said, "You're going down, Brat." Naruto snorting said, "That's funny, I was just about to say the same thing." Kakashi walking in the middle of the field said, "This is an all-out battle between Jiraiya of the Sannin and Naruto Otsutsuki, Konoha's god of carnage. The winner is decided when the someone is unable to stand up. None are to interfere." He then turning his head asked, "Are there any more stipulations?" Jiraiya with an arrogant smirk said, "If I win, the brat gets his powers sealed and returns to the Namikaze family." Naruto snorting said, "When I win I'm going to end your career, but my stipulation is that you have to stop doing your so-called research in the village hidden in the leaves. I refuse to let you peek on my Nai-chan, Anko-ne, Yuago-chan, or any other female belonging to this village. And so help me Izanami-ba, if after I curb stomp you I'd better not even hear from Kakashi-ni that one of them or even someone resembling them is in your little orange book, or I'll personally feed your soul to Tsubasa-ne and use your body as target practice for my most extreme fire jutsu." Jiraiya smirking said, "Done." Kakashi having written everything down made both people sign the sheet, along with the others around them. When Tsubasa signed everyone blinked when the paper turned black and Jiraiya's name turned ash white. Tsubasa giggling said, "This document is not only legally binding, but once Jiraiya Baka breaks the contract his soul is automatically sent to me." She then started to laugh with an evil glee. Naruto, ignoring her evil cackling, was in the middle of the ring with both of his eyes closed. Jinx was sitting on his back. He still had his shackles on but wasn't even worried about them, as he planned on using the powers of Zekrom or maybe Kyogre. Hell, if he felt like it, he might even go Primal Kyogre or Mega Lucario on the Baka. He then, opening his eyes, revealed the Kasugan, now with 9 Tomo and 4 rings. He then tapped into the power of Zekrom, could feel lightning sparking off of his body, and could hear the roar of thunder in the distance. Kakashi then started the match, and Jiraiya, like the arrogant fool he was, rushed towards Naruto, thinking that as a Sannin he had this in the bag. He was sadly mistaken, as with the sound of a thunderclap Naruto vanished. Jiraiya was then sent skipping across the training area, electricity sparking off of his body. Naruto, appearing 2 inches from where he previously was, could be seen cloaked in a powerful electric current. The current was as black as the night and as thick as baby's arm. It was so powerful the grass was burning and soil beneath his feet was blackening. Naruto literally had so much electricity running through his body right now. All the hair on his body was standing up, and his body was glowing. Jiraiya, standing to his feet, shook his head and scowled. Running towards Naruto again, this time with a Rasengan in his hand, he gasped when Naruto ran towards him with Kakashi's signature lightning blade in his right hand, but 10 times more powerful. Hell, the lightning was carving into the ground. Jiraiya, launching a clone forward, flinched when the clone was fried on contact with the lightning edge. He then came forward and slammed his Rasengan into Naruto's stomach, thinking that he had won. His eyes widened when Naruto turned into a mass of shiny red goop. Naruto, appearing back in his starting spot, had his hair shadowing his face. The lightning still sparking around him. He, slowly lifting his head, tapped into the powers of Primal Kyogre. Like that, a substantial downpour appeared over not only Konoha, but the elemental nations itself. Hell, AIM was getting even more rain than before, and people were terrified of this. Naruto's eyes then changed from the dark purple of his Kasugan to an almost snow white. The Tomo and the rings were now purple instead of snow white. Naruto, looking up, seemed to be at peace until he screamed in agony. The scream started to transform from an agony-filled scream to an insane, powerful, and dark laugh. The reason why? Well, once again Naruto was going through a transformation. His body shot up in height as he went from 4.9 feet tall until he was a hulking 7 feet tall. His hair spiked out and turned to black. Thick black horns grew out of his skull that was covered with what looked like thick white goop. His mouth gained sharper teeth, and his 4 large canine teeth were glowing with power. His tongue forked and became coated in a dark red goop. His body gained an extreme layer of muscle, and parts of his arm gained some of the white goop, looking like cartilage connecting his arms together. Thick bony spikes grew out of his elbows. His hands widened and a slit appeared in each hand. In the right hand, a glowing blue orb with the symbol for Alpha appeared. This arm became dark blue and glowing runes for Alpha could be seen running up the arm. In the left hand was a dark stone pulsing with electricity. This arm turned pitch black and lightning patterns could be seen in the arm. His chest then widened and a slit appeared in the middle of it. Naruto, roaring, tapped into the powers of Mega Mewtwo X. A dark purple stone appeared in the middle of his chest. His upper body then turned dark purple and unknown symbols started appeared on his body. From his back 6 large pairs of powerful wings appeared. The first pair was a very dark blue, with the white goop saturating parts of the wings. This pair of wings also looked to be made of water. The second pair of wings was pitch black and sparking with lightning, and the white goop was applied liberally on the wings. The last pair of wings were dark purple, and the white goop was stretched across the inside of the wings like a protective shell. His lower body became just as powerful as the upper body and just as confused. The feet arched up, and thick white claws appeared. A thick and long tail appeared, that had spikes going all the way down. The tip of said tail was shaped like a spear. Naruto roared again as the white goop spread across his body and tentacles appeared on his body. On each item in a slit his symbol appeared. What looked like black tears come from the edge of Naruto's eyes and trailed all the way down his face. The last thing to happen was for a slit to appear in the middle of his forehead. The slit then opened and revealed something that shocked Tsubasa, Kami, Amaterasu, Yami, Susanoo, Tsukuyomi, Izanami, and Izanagi, all of whom were watching. In the slit glaring at Jiraiya with pure malice was a fully evolved, fully matured, full-powered Kasugan that was dark red with 36 snow-white tomo and 6 white rings. Naruto then roared, and the ground shook. He then set all 3 of his eyes on Jiraiya, who was actually shitting his pants at the moment. Tsubasa was the only one to notice that Jinx was gone. She, looking around for the mighty blade, gained wide eyes, spotting Jinx in her human form as a 5-year-old girl, standing behind Naruto with wide eyes. Tsubasa, teleporting to Jinx, grabbing her, and moving back from the battle, asked, "How in the 9 rings of hell are you not in your sword, and why are you 5? Jinx, looking up at Tsubasa, said, "Tsubasa-sama, that form is no ordinary god form. That right there is a true face of destruction. That is Naruto's god of destruction form, and honestly he has more power than myself and the other Biju combined right now." Tsubasa, hearing this, felt her jaw scrape the ground. Everyone else hearing this was shocked. Hell, Kushina and Minato was gaping at this statement. Even the spying Kabuto was shocked by this information. Naruto then started to laugh, and it made many shiver, some in pure lust, others in justifiable fear. Naruto, clenching one of his fists, said, "Now this is power. On one hand we have the full might of Zekromheim, the Pokemon version of Big Sister Susanoo. On the other hand we have primal reverted Kyogre, the Titaness of the Sea. Then we add in the full power of a mega-evolved Mewtwo and the full power of my lovely mother's Kasugan." He then, clenching his fist again, smiled when a bolt of lightning struck down the tree near Jiraiya. He then, chuckling, said, "Tsubasa, nay, take note that I now have a god of Carnage form, a pseudo-god of technology form, and a god of destruction form." Tsubasa, with a scroll out, was indeed writing this down and describing the first 2 forms. Naruto then vanished, and everyone gaped when Jiraiya was sent barreling through several trees. Naruto, appearing behind him, grabbed the man by his arm and tossed him head first into the sky. Naruto, vanishing in a flash of black lightning, appeared above Jiraiya and slammed his left hand down on Jiraiya's back, making the man gurgle in pain as blood was in his mouth. Jiraiya, crashing down the ground, didn't get a break, as Naruto appeared and kicked the Toad Summoner in the shoulder, making him fly towards more trees. Naruto, appearing in front of Jiraiya, clotheslined the man, making Jiraiya's body try to catch up with his head and neck. Naruto, with Jiraiya's chin on his elbows, smirked and started to spin in a high speed, literally becoming nothing but a blur of colors. He then, stopping his spinning, sent Jiraiya soaring towards a small river. Naruto, appearing over the man, was about to slam his fist into the man's gut, when the man turned into smoke. Jiraiya, appearing on the other side of the river, was panting and holding his right shoulder, knowing that his entire arm was dead. He, quickly going through hand signs, summoned the chief toad. Naruto, spotting the toad, smirked and started to chuckle. He, turning to look Anko in the eyes, said, "Remember the question you asked me, Anko, nay? Well, I'm about to give you a first-person point of view of one of my larger summons." He, doing the necessary hand signs, swiped one of his canine teeth with his finger and slammed it on the ground and roared out, summoning jutsu. A huge poof of smoke occurred that was larger than Gamabuta. A loud screech then was heard, and everyone from Konoha who was rooting for Jiraiya got the feeling that whatever Naruto had just summoned was going to make Gamabuta look like a fresh guppy. The smoke from Naruto's summon cleared and Tsubasa started to curse like a sailor. The reason why? Well, Naruto was now flying beside a origin form Giratina, who was flying around him. Naruto, smirking, switched out the power of Mega Mewtwo X for his Giratinaheim. A black orb appeared in the slit of his chest, and golden pincers appeared on his face. All 6 of his wings gained red spurs on the ends. Giratina, leaning forward, asked, "Who dares summon me? I am the queen of the different dimension." Naruto, flying up to Giratina's face, gently placed his right hand against her face and said gently, "It was I who summoned you, my beautiful queen of the different dimension." Giratina, hearing his flattering words, tilted her head and asked, "Who are you, mortal, and why do I find myself so attracted to you?" Naruto, smiling, said, "My lovely queen, I am Otsutsuki Naruto, 9th member of the Eternal Council of the Gods. I am the youngest son of Otsutsuki Kaguya, mother of the Sage of 6 Paths and very first person to ever use chakra. I am the god of Carnage, the god of technology, and the god of destruction. I am also the summoner of all 719 Pokemon, including yourself, my rebellious queen. I have been blessed by your mother Kamiheim with the ability to use your powers. Giratina hearing this nuzzled his hand and said, You're the one mother spoke to us about. The newest god, and the one who would bring us to a new home. I am honored to be the first legendary you summoned my different dimension emperor. Naruto smiled at this, ignoring the gobsmacked looks on everyone's faces. Hell, even Jinx was shocked. Gamabuta hearing the entire conversation said, Oh hell no. Kami-sama warned the summon realm about fighting the new god and her little brother. Jiraiya, I am not about to be turned into chow for one of those damn hellhounds Otsutsuki-sama can summon. He then shook the shocked Jiraiya off of him and hopped over to Naruto, who was looking on in amusement. Gamabuta stabbing his dagger into the ground and actually dropping to one knee said, Lord Otsutsuki, I Gamabuta, chief of the Toad summons Urbi, swear loyalty to you and pledge that no member of the Toad clan shall ever fight against you, your family, or any of your summoner. I also pledge that if you ever need assistance to only ask and the entirety of the Toad clan will be at your call. Naruto smiling said, I accept your loyalty and pledges Gamabuta. Now be gone as I have a pervert to finish off. Gamabuta nodding vanished in a poof of smoke, making Jiraiya cursing like a sailor. Naruto sitting down on the ground smirked and said, What will you do now, Ero-sanin? Jiraiya sneering held out his hand to form a larger version of the Rasengan. He smirking at the shock on everyone's face, including Minato said, This is my improved version of the Rasengan. Myself and Link was so close to figuring out how to finish the jutsu. This is my ultimate trump card since I can't use the toads against you. Naruto chuckling said, Well then let's see the power of this so-called improved version of the Rasengan. He then crossing his arms said, I tell you what, I won't even lift a finger to defend myself. I'll let you hit with me with your attack. Everyone blinked hearing this, including Jiraiya. Naruto laughing said, Well then come on. Jiraiya shaking his head launched at Naruto with the really big Rasengan and slammed it into Naruto's arms while crying out, Cho Udama Rasengan. A cloud of smoke occurred and most people thought it was over, but Anko knew better. She had this feeling in her gut that that attack didn't even bother Naruto. She was right as seconds later loud amused laughter could be heard in the smoke, terrifying Jiraiya and making many others pale and tremble. TTJD. Cough, civilian council cough. When the smoke cleared, standing there without a scratch on him was Naruto, Giratina still in her origin form circling his location high above him. Naruto smirking unfolded his arms and said, What a disappointment. Oh well, I guess I can show you a true attack. Jiraiya couldn't even get a word out as he was launched into the sky. Naruto appearing in the sky behind him, wrapped his arms around Jiraiya's stomach. Flying into the storm clouds, he tossed the man high above them. Appearing behind the man, he had his right hand held up high. He letting loose a terrible laugh said, Do try not to die from this. Combination Hijutsu. Pure destruction. In his very hand the elements of a storm formed. First a lightning bolt appeared, it being the color of blood. It then got surrounded in a powerful wind current. In this wind current water could be found. Then the lightning bolt was encased by a thick iron casing. That casing grew lovely flowers and a few roots appeared at the edge. Then the metal casing got a thin layer of ice on it. Finally the entire thing was trapped inside a pink crystal shaped like the snarling face of a dragon. Naruto then tossed it at Jiraiya as the man was falling through the storm cloud, towards the same river that Naruto had tried to knock him into earlier. The attack hit him just as he breached the clouds again, this time soaked to his skin by the torrential rain in the clouds. There was a huge explosion and his scream was so loud it could be heard all the way in Demon Country. He then hit the river hard, making him scream even more as the lightning bolt hit him again once he made contact with the water. Everyone flinched hearing him scream and wondered what was going on, well, everyone except for Tsubasa, Jinx, Kakashi, Anko, Sarutobi, Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon, Iruka, Yuago, Ino, Shikamaru, Hinata, Kiba, Kurenai, Shino, Choji, Asuma, Tenten, Lee, and Neji. They weren't wondering because they were looking through Sarutobi's crystal ball to witness. Anko giggling like a schoolgirl said, That was the most badass, purely destructive, flashy, impossible, illogical thing I have ever seen. She then wiping away a tear said, I'm so proud. Kakashi shaking his head said, it seems like just yesterday I was teaching him how to walk and talk. Now he's creating and using S-rank jutsu like it's normal. He then started to cry in joy as he said, they grow up so fast. Sarutobi shaking his head said, I remember when he was just a snot-nosed kid who had eyes only for two things. Ramen and his Anko Ne. Now he's a B-rank shinobi in the bingo book, a god, part of the Eternal Council of Deities and one of the most powerful shinobi Konoha has ever produced. He then wiping a proud tear from his eye said, damn, I'm proud to call him my grandson. Jinx drooling said, me want Naruto. Me want have Naruto's kids. Me seduce him. Tsubasa had a dictionary in her hands and was writing in it. She drawing Naruto's picture for the definition of destruction said, my little brother just literally redefined the word destruction. She shutting the book with a goofy grin on her face said, he is definitely a member of the family now. I mean, what other family can admit to doing shit like that? Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon, Ino, Kiba, and Choji all had stars in their eyes. At once they all said, that was so fucking awesome. I wonder if he'd be willing to teach me that. Iruka hearing this quickly made a note to beg Naruto not to teach that to Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon, and to also find out when did the three learn such foul words. Kion and Akane turning to look at each other both nodded and said, never ever piss of Otsutsuki-sama. Naruko putting some of her red hair behind her ears said, stupid Ero Sanin. I'm probably gonna have to heal him now. Damn. Natsumi in the shocked Kushina's arms was bouncing up and down in pure joy squealing about how awesome that was. Kushina herself was trying to calm her rapidly beating heart as what Naruto had just done was godly. Minato was pale and sweating as Jiraiya was most likely dead or knocking on death's door. The civilian council was already making plans to instantly get on Naruto's good side or they were royally screwed. Kabuto was staining his underwear on both ends, terrified at the pure destructive power Naruto had at his disposal. Sasuke was fuming in jealousy. Sakura was now changing her focus from Sasuke to Naruto, realizing that Naruto could destroy Sasuke with one finger tied behind his back. Shino pushing up his shades said, most terrifying. Kurenai had a hand over her mouth at this. Hinata was giggling like Jiraiya would be if he was near a bathhouse. Lee had flames in his eyes and shouted, Yash. Neji was wondering who would win in an all-out battle between he and Naruto. Tenten like Hinata was giggling in pure perversion. Asuma letting his cigarette drop from his mouth in pure shock was feeling very afraid of Naruto. Shikamaru sighing mumbled, troublesome gods. Choji was shoveling popcorn down his mouth enjoying the show. Yuago was wiping the drool from the corners of her mouth at how badass Naruto was being. Naruto landing smirked at the smoking form of Jiraiya. He then walking over to the man said, now to finish you off. Two clones appeared and grabbed the man. Two more clones appeared and grabbed the man's legs. Jiraiya was now laying flat on his stomach, a Naruto clone holding each of his limbs. Naruto jumping into the air, flipped over with his left foot raised high. He descending on the squirming Jiraiya said, shades of Senju Tsunade. Heavenly curb stomp. He then slammed his left foot down on Jiraiya's spine, smirking at the loud sickening crunch that could be heard. This was followed by Jiraiya screaming very loudly. He dismissing the clones, walked over to Tsubasa, slowly coming out of his transformation. When he reached her, his eyes rolled to the back of his head, as Tsubasa barely caught him in her arms. She giggling said, he won, and Jiraiya will never be a shinobi again, as Naruto has basically crippled him from the waist down. She then smiling turned to Jinx and said, come Jinx, we need to get him home. He does have a date with a certain purple-haired Anbu tonight, and will need some sleep. Jinx pouting said, okay Tsubasa-sama, but does he even know about the date you and Kami-sama set up? Tsubasa giggling as she walked away said, he will when she comes to pick him up tonight. Everyone around her sweat dropped and thought, I see how Anko is the normal one. Anko herself was pouting as it was just confirmed that she was indeed the normal one. Yuago then realizing that she was the only Anbu with purple-haired Anbu squealed in barely contained glee. She grabbing Kurenai's right hand dragged her away and said, come on Nai-chan, you have to help me prepare for my date with Naruto-kun. Kurenai with a sweat drop said, you're acting like a fangirl Yu-chan. Yuago, turning to her with flames in her eyes, said, "I will forget you said that as Naruto-kun is taking me out on a date. If you ever say that again, I will show you just why I am not a fangirl." She then continued to drag Kurenai to her home. Anko, now with a cloud of depression over her head, was drawing a circle in the ground near a tree as she mumbled, "I'm the normal sister. I'm supposed to be the wild and crazy sister that has a craving for blood and explosions." She then, standing proudly with the evil smile on her face, said, "Well then, I'll just be the older sister with blackmail material on my darling little brother." She then vanished in a swirl of leaves, missing everyone in the group sweat drop at what she had just said. Sarutobi, shaking his head, turned to Kakashi and said, "I still think it was a bad idea for her to become his guardian sister." Kakashi, reading his book, said, "I have always thought that Hokage-sama. It was the late Uchiha Makoto-sama that convinced you to let Anko be his guardian sister. Frankly, I want to know how she did so." Sarutobi, remembering just how Makoto had talked him into it, scowled and said, "It was all because of Jiraiya. He was caught doing his research by her and she was about to turn him into a female the hard way, but decided to inform me of his trespassing." Kakashi, hearing this, said, "Well, there you go. She came in when you were using your crystal ball to peek on women and was going to turn you into a woman, but then decided to blackmail you into letting Anko become Naruto's guardian, so in a way it's all your fault, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi's eyebrow was twitching as he said, "Hitaki Kakashi, for that, you'll be chasing Tora until all 3 of your students become Chunin." Kakashi, hearing this, actually started to tremble in fear. He then, remembering how Naruto could make the demon cat come to him, stopped sweating and said, "No problem, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi, gaining an evil smirk, said, "Did I forget to mention that you will not be allowed to get Naruto to assist you?" Kakashi, hearing this, quickly said, "Please don't, honorable Hokage-sama. I'll be a good boy, I promise." Sarutobi started to cackle with evil glee. That night Naruto was once again dressed in a regal kimono, this one being golden with the image of a crumbling city in purple. His hair was once again tied into a top knot, this one having 2 purple pins in it. On his neck was the necklace given to him by Kami, and on his fingers were his rings. The added thing was the thin layer of black eyeliner around each of his eyes, along with the golden orbed earrings. Naruto, yawning, glared at his 2 sisters who were on the couch watching a movie on the TV he had just created. He was about to yawn again when someone knocked on his door. He, getting up, opened the door and blushed, spotting Yuago in a purple spaghetti-strap dress. Her purple hair was as it normally was, and she had on a light appliance of makeup on her face. She had on fang-shaped earrings and had on a pair of purple high heels. All in all, she looked dropout gorgeous. She, smiling, said, "Well, are you ready for our date?" Naruto, smiling, closed the door, said, "Ready as I'll ever be." Yuago, taking his arm, then lead him to one of the fanciest restaurants in the village. She, saying her name, walked inside with Naruto and smiled when he held out her chair for her. Once she was seated, he himself took a seat. Once they ordered their food, the 2 of them started talking, and before long Naruto was smiling as Yuago was laughing at the joke he had just told. Yuago, eating the meal she had ordered, wondered what they should do next. She blinked when she spotted Tsubasa appear with a sign that said, "Take a walk through the village, that ends at the Hokage monument." She, smiling, decided to do what was suggested. She, after Naruto finished his steak, took him on a walk through the village, leaning on him as the moon shone down on them as they walked. Naruto himself was enjoying the walk and wondering if he should sing a song for Yuago too. When they reached the monument, he smiled as this was his favorite place to go. He, sitting down, smiled at Yuago when she sat down beside him. He asked her, "So what made you choose this place to lead me to after that lovely meal?" Yuago, leaning against his arm, said, "I just wanted somewhere that we had a great point of view, and this place has the best view." Naruto, smiling, was about to agree, when his senses started screaming at him. Standing to his feet, he looks around and spreads his chakra across the village and outside of the village. His eyes widened, feeling 3 chakra signatures heading towards the village with about 20 other more sinister chakra signatures chasing them. He, standing up, discarded the kimono and summoned Jinx in her scythe form. He, teleporting to the location of the chakra signatures, felt it when Yuago teleported to the Hokage's office to inform him. His eyes nearly fell out of his head spotting Uchiha Makoto being assisted by the sound girl from the forest and girl with spiky red hair, red eyes and black glasses on. Behind them was multiple sound shinobi. He teleporting in front of the girls asked, "What are you doing with Makotoheim and why are you being chased by those scumbags?" Kin panting said, "We found her in one of Orochimaru's bases and rescued her." The redhead wiping the drool from her chin said, "Those scumbags as you call them are chasing us because of the fact that we rescued her from him. Also behind us are two people wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them." Naruto hearing this narrowed his eyes and said, "Get behind me." Karen and Kin nodding quickly moved behind them with a panting Makoto. The sound shinobi landing scowled and said, "Move kid and let us take back what Orochimaru stole fair and square of course after we kill those stupid sluts for stealing her." Naruto gaining a terrifying smirk on his face said, "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see those two sluts as you called them now belong to me. And Makotoheim never belonged to that snake-faced failure. Now I'm going to give you one's chance to get lost before I rip your souls out of your bodies and feed them to my darling sister." The sound shinobi hearing this started to laugh with arrogance and said, "Kid, it's 1 against 20. Naruto hearing this started to cackle with glee as he said, "Oh no, I'm afraid you've got it wrong. It doesn't matter how many you bring. I'm the god of Carnage and my lovely partner is Jinx the nine-tailed fox." All 20 shinobi hearing this blanched and stuttered, "You're the god of Carnage." Naruto laughing said, "So you finally see." He then vanished and appeared behind the man. Tilting his head to the left he said, "Oh well." As he said this all 20 men fell into chunks of meat. Just then 2 people in black cloaks arrived. Naruto looking at them, raised an eyebrow and asked, "If it isn't Hitachi Uchiha and a walking fish, what are you doing here?" Hitachi with a serious look on her face said, "Naruto-kun, please come with us now. Our leader has decided that you have become too powerful." Naruto laughing said, "Oh please Hitachi-chan, we both know that you're only in that pathetic group to protect me from the inside." He then blocked a swing from Kisame and said, "This one on the other hand." He then tossed Kisame back and launched at the man, while Hitachi walked over to her mother and removed her Akatsuki cloak. Wrapping it around Makoto she said, "My mission is done. You have been found mother and Naruto-kun is strong enough to protect himself." She then blinked when 3 squads of Anbu appeared along with Kakashi, Anko, Zabuza, and Sarutobi. All of them ready to ride to the death. She then heard someone snort. Turning around she blinked spotting Naruto holding Kisame's head in his hand, Samahata over his shoulder wrapped up. Walking over to Sarutobi he handed the head to the man and said, "You guys move to slow. I've already taken down all threats, and rescued Makotoheim." His eyes moving to the once again drooling Karen and the shocked Kin said, "Old man, those 2 are to be placed under the protection of the Otsutsuki clan, and they are both willing to inform you of everything the snake-faced bastard has." He then narrowing his eyes said, "If either of them are hurt in any way I'll personally rip the head off of the person who does it, no matter who it is." He then sending Jinx back home said, "Now if you'd excuse me I have a date to finish." He then vanished in a swirl of black fire. Appearing back on the monument he sat down as Yuago appeared back by his side. She leaning on his arm asked, "Will you sing me a song Naruto-kun?" Naruto smiling said, "Of course my Haim." He standing up snapped his fingers and once again the clone band appeared. This time the female clone was not sitting on the amp. Naruto summoning his guitar closed his eyes and said, "This one is for you Yu-chan. All my heart by sleeping with sirens I don't own. There's so many things that I could say. But I'm sure it would come out all wrong. You got something that I can't explain. Still I try and let you know. That first summer we spent is one we'll never forget. Looking for any kind of reason to escape all the mess that we thought was what made us. Ain't it funny now? We can see. We're who we're meant to be. You still have all of my. You still have all of my. You still have all of my heart. Ooh, 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 ooh. There's too many times I had to say. I could have been better and stronger for you and me. You always make me feel okay. Those late summers we spent stay up talking all night. I'd ask, you think we'd ever make it? You'd say, I'm sure if it's right. Ain't it funny to think just how stupid I used to be? Hope you always believe. You still have all of my. You still have all of my. You still have all of my heart. You still have all of my. You still have all of my. You still have all of my heart. Let them talk and talk and talk. Let them say what they want. We will laugh at the thought they don't know what we've got. Every year that goes by, a year older we are. You'll still be beautiful then, bless your beautiful heart. They'll talk and talk and talk. How crazy is it? Someone could waste their whole life, helplessly. Just patiently waiting for a love like you and me. You still have all of my. You still have all of my. You still have all of my heart. 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 You still have all of my. I've been waiting my whole life. You still have all of my. For someone to save me, still can't believe that you're mine. You still have all of my heart. Naruto opened his eyes and sweat dropped, spotting Yuago with hearts in her eyes. He then, hearing someone shout his name, looked down at the village, and the sweat drop grew, spotting all of the women in the village all below them swooning at the fact that he just sang to Yuago. He, making the clones vanish, was about to leave to his apartment, when his right arm was grabbed by Yuago, who had nothing but lust in her eyes. She, smiling, said, "The date isn't over until I say it's over, Naruto-kun." She then teleported to her apartment, still holding on to him. She, locking the door to her apartment, shoved him into her bedroom. Naruto, landing on her bed, wondered what was going on, when she came in just her underwear with a lust-filled smile on her face. She then, walking towards him with swaying hips, said, "I hope you're ready, Naruto-kun, because you're not leaving this room until tomorrow." Naruto's sweat dropped hearing this, and thought, that's why Tsubasa said she'd see me tomorrow. Damn it, she knew this was going to happen. Revenge will be mine, dear sister. Yuago then pounced on him. Across the village in his apartment, still watching the TV with Jinx, Tsubasa suddenly shivered and felt really cold for some reason. Jinx, spotting this, giggled and said, "You just made his prank list. I hope you're ready, Tsubasa-sama." Tsubasa, hearing this, blanched and started to tremble in fear. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.